Okay, that's gonna go to Kathy. I think the rest of yours are there, though. They're back here. All right.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and staff. My colleagues are always a little envious when I get this charge because they always say they can't believe I have the rapt attention of this much power. But I thank you for that. I don't know if all of you know that we bought that old bowling alley in Capitol Beach over 30 years ago. And when we did, you weren't here. And we struggled with rules, regulations, and codes and the fire department until the city came along. And then through your collaborative efforts, of course, we now have a daycare and a school, and we have over active youth department and over 2,500 members. And I want to thank you, all of you, on behalf of our church for that. Would you pray with me, please? God of justice and mercy, we thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve the people of our city. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with love and restraint. Give us a spirit of service and remind us that we are stewards of your authority. Guide us to be the leaders your people need. Help us to see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us, and treat all persons, no matter how weak or poor, with the reverence your creation deserves. And finally, Father, renew us with the strength of your presence and the joy of helping to build a community worthy of the human person. We ask this as your family, confident in your goodness and love. In his name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Christie. Okay, so first order is the February business of the month, OC Beads, and Ms. Johnson has a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Lewis and members of the council. I am pleased to announce the business of the month for February 2017, OC Beads. Tonight, we are joined by the owner, Sue Osborne. Sue has always been an entrepreneur throughout her career, which has included interior design, food, and art. She would seize any opportunity presented to her and loved the challenge it provided. In 1994, she saw a need for a bead store in Mill Valley up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and without knowing anything about beads, Sue jumped in with 2 feet to open her first bead store. From there, she grew and opened a store in La Jolla, then moved her store here to South Orange County, and finally found her home in Dana Point in 2012. In March 2016, OC Beads opened their current store at 34181 Pacific Coast Highway. Sue loves helping her clientele find their creative outlet and giving them confidence to build something beautiful, believing that anyone can bead a necklace, earrings, or anything that they want to imagine. Every string of beads in the store is hand-picked and chosen for its unique look. Sue also prides herself on providing stones at a great price and being a 21st century bead store. You can often find sapphires, rubies, and emeralds at OC Beads, and you can always find a smiling face. Not only does OC Beads provide the stones and beads for all your needs, they also have all the tools that you need. They offer classes to help you engage your outlet and learn new techniques for beading. Through these classes, students are able to also find the artist within themselves. On behalf of the City Council, we would like to congratulate you for being selected as Business of the Month for February, and thank you for making the world more beautiful one bead at a time. We wish you many years of continued success.
First, I just wanted to say one of the reasons that I chose your business was that OC Beads was in one of the buildings that was being torn down from the project that is going on there now. So you were a renter there, and your building was torn down. You had to leave. And what you did was make the decision not to leave Dana Point, but to stay and invest in Dana Point. She bought that building. Yes, yes. Bought that building. She spent money renovating it, and she has dedicated her business to being a good Dana Point citizen, and that's the kind of business of the month we appreciate.
Thank you. It's nice. Appreciate that.
So, on behalf of the city, we give you a certificate of recognition for OC Beads as our featured business of the month. And we are very, very happy that you chose to stay here. Thank you so much.
I'm very happy with what you're doing. So thank you for your hard
you.
efforts.
Then there's going to be a presentation from the chamber, Heather Downs.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for having the Chamber as a part of Business of the Month. I just want to say congratulations. If people don't also know, she's a part of our Art Fest that we've been doing as well. She has been an active part of Dana Point, and I was sad that Minuteman Press was leaving, but then I was very happy that you took over. So it's a good... Yeah, right. Yeah, MITS is still within walking distance, so it's a perfect trifecta. So we're happy to have you as Business of the Month, and we'd like to offer you a free year membership for the Chamber as well. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's take a picture.
On 3, 1, 2.
Congratulations and thank you. She can be taught. Okay, that being all the presentations, we'll go on to the consent calendar. Matters listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one roll call vote. There are no separate discussions of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or the staff request that a specific item or items be removed from the consent calendar for a separate action. So are there any items to be removed from the calendar?
Not from the public.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any from council? Oh, yes, Steph. Steph said no. So
None
we're
from
good.
staff.
What's that?
No items are pulled from staff,
Okay.
none from the public.
Oh, I see. Okay, you were just public. Sorry. Okay, so no items are to be pulled, so let's call for a,
I'll move the calendar.
thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, let's vote. Good, because my, yes. That's it? Okay, so that passes 5-0. The consent calendar is approved. Are there any titles of the ordinance to be read, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no titles to read this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the part of the City Council meeting where we have public comments. There is a 3-minute time limit per person and an overall time limit of 15 minutes for public comment portion on the agenda. The balance of the public comments will be heard after new business if there are public comments that extend beyond the 15 minutes. All comments are to be directed to the City Council, and Please, no personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a personal, courteous decorum, as will we, and respect your right to speak to us. State law prohibits the city council from taking action on specific items unless it appears on the posted agenda. And we want that to be clear, because when people come and they talk to us and we say, thank you very much for your comment, we're not dismissing you or ignoring you. It's just that we cannot talk about or discuss any item that isn't on our agenda, and whatever you say in the public comment is not an agenda item. Do we have any public comments? Thank you. Okay, we have several public comments. First one, Penny Maynard, and then Paul Simons. Good evening, welcome.
Hello. My name is Penny Maynard, and I'm a 21-year resident of Dana Point. I'm here to speak again on the issues about which I care, and I think that will help Dana Point grow its economy while connecting residents to their city government and staff. And I'm going to keep mentioning these ideas every time I get up at a meeting until I hear anything back or if they're being thought about or considered. I brought Dana Point City Council districts. I'm still very much in favor. City manager biweekly e-newsletters, city council office hours, and I support open data as a way to bring residents closer to the city. And when Dana Point is ready, Dana Point Beach to bring in additional revenue through TOT and the transient occupancy tax. And I also have picked up a new idea that I think will be an opportunity for residents to immediately connect with the city when a concern arises. The city in the Bay Area has an app for your phone. I know it works on the iPhone, but probably for Android also, where residents can immediately connect with the city and report various concerns that include, like if there's a pothole, I know there are none, Matt, in town. Fallen trees, noisy neighborhood parties. I mean, an accident they see, or if they see a problem with, with people doing something they're not supposed to. Now, in this particular city, they developed their own app, and when I heard about it, I wanted Dana Point to have this too. I think it's a great idea, because you have there'd be someone on staff at City Hall who would be able to see what is sent. It's very simple. You just put your location in and put your concern and hit send, and the city has it. It's immediate. You don't have to go through phone calls and leave a voicemail or anything else. I think it is really great. And I have a pin. My team did their job Sunday night, the Pats. I said, do your job. Tom Brady did his job, and the Pats did their job. I am so happy. It was the first time, because in the rainy weather I get depressed, but first time I really smiled and laughed and screamed. It's a wonder they didn't call somebody on the app to say, come and get her. But I'm really, really happy, so I am happy. 5. Thank you very much, and I'll be back the next time with my list. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Maynard, and I invite you to exercise your right to speak to us anytime you want.
Oh, if you have office hours, I'd like to.
Okay, Paul Simons, and then Deborah Ashby.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. My name is Paul Simons. I am the Public Affairs Manager with Southern California Gas Company. And first and foremost, I wanted to take the opportunity to really commend the city staff and the way that they work with our team out in the streets. I have the fortunate of working with 13 different jurisdictions throughout this region, and Dana Point is near the top in terms of how staff operates with our folks out in the field, and I just wanted to commend staff since I had the opportunity tonight. That being said, this evening I am wearing a little bit of a different hat. I'm serving as the chairman of the South Orange County Economic Coalition, and we represent the business community in this region from Lake Forest down to San Clemente through advocacy, leadership, representation, and education. This evening, I am here to announce our 3rd annual South Orange County Economic Report. a data and market analysis of South Orange County. The 2017 Economic Report is a unique economic research report that focuses specifically on the cities and planned communities within our region that contribute over $25.6 billion to Orange County, to this economy. We are offering 2 free tickets to the city and an opportunity for the city to buy a table. I understand that staff has reached out to the city manager's office. We'd love to have all of you there, and we'd love to, I know that we've reached out to the city manager's office for data to help inform this report as well. Again, this is the 3rd year that we've put this report on. We are now starting to see some trends. We're going to be able to share that at the Economic Report Luncheon. And the luncheon itself is going to be March 10th at Saddleback College in the Student Services Center from 11:30 to 1:30 p.m. So I invite you all to join us. We'd love to see you. And with that, have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simons, and all compliments are always appreciated. Always. Feel free. Deborah Ashby, and then Andrea Swain.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. I'm Deborah Ashby. I'm with the South Coast Air Quality Management District. And for those of you that don't know already, I am your representative from the Legislative and Public Affairs Division of the agency. And I can be a resource for you, a point of contact. I'm just here to be of assistance to you. Your elected representatives on our board, which you may already know, are Supervisor Sean Nelson and Lake Forest Council Member Dwight Robinson. I brought with you today our newsletter that has my business card attached to it so that you know how to reach me. And there's a very nice article in it with our new executive officer, who's an Orange County resident, his Wayne Nastry. So there's something interesting reading for you there. And unless you have questions, I thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much. Ms. Swain, and then Lynn Smith.
Hello, Mayor, City Council. My name is Andrea Swain. I am the event coordinator for the Dana Point Festival of Whales. I'm here to remind everybody that we are coming up quickly on the 46th annual event, March 4th, 5th, 11th, and 12th at the Dana Point Harbor. Of course, kicked off by the city's annual Festival of Whales parade on the 4th. This year, we opened the logo contest to the public. We had 58 great entries from actually all over the world. Came up with a very beautiful, beautiful logo. The poster is in. Wanted to share that with everybody. The other thing that is in is our Festival of Whales merchandise. I brought a sweatshirt for all of you. They'll be in your mailbox. Mayor said that she would be happy to model it for everybody here tonight. So if she would indulge, that would be great. Just wanted to invite everybody to visit the website, www.festivalofwhales.com. You can buy your sweatshirts, t-shirts, hats, bags, backpacks, and posters there. We have a very full schedule of events planned for everybody. A couple of new things. We do have a kids fun fair, which, oh, she took it back. A very full schedule of events. It's okay. If it's not here, that's fine. A very full schedule of events packed to the hilt. A new event this year will be a kids fun fair down at the harbor, which will include a carnival type event that is being put on by the chamber. The street fair will continue up at La Plaza Park as usual, following the Festival of Whales parade. Too much to mention here. I'd really love everybody to check it out on the website and check us out online. Also, we'd love to invite people, small businesses in town, to get involved. We do welcome very large, the larger the better, actually, sponsorships, but we do have sponsorships called the Friends of the Festival, which is a smaller monetary sponsorship that allows mom and pop businesses, people that have been here for a while, to, for a lower cost, have your logo with a link on the website. Oh, beautiful. What do you guys think? Turn around, let's see the back. Gorgeous, gorgeous. So anyway, give me a call. You can contact us via the website. Everybody here, most everybody knows me and has my email address. But if you don't, you can contact me via the website. Can't wait to see everybody down at the harbor.
Thank you. I can say it's incredibly comfortable, very warm, and anybody that knows me knows I'm always cold, so I will be wearing this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, Lynn Smith. And then Nadia Starner.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
Hi.
I thought the invocation was really nice, considering the change in the council, and also for everybody to remember why we're here, and because sometimes there may be things the council of previous times didn't want to hear, and they would be judgmental and different things like that, and kind of you were made to feel welcome, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
The facts are, art can change your life and your city. And so this paper that I've given you all copies of, I'm not going to refer to this at all. It's a reference article from PRI Here and Now by Corey Jones from New York Times, senior art critic, and how he talked about public art. So the three things I want to hit tonight on the suggestion, one is a need, I believe, to separate the Arts and Music Commission, because people that were chosen for their music contributions don't really have any expertise in choosing art. So I think a separation of that might be in order. The other thing was about the Planning Commission. In the Gloria Day, I know April O'Connor was the only one that didn't think that the art they were proposing for the public art was qualified, and I took a trip up there about a month ago, and I regret not coming back here because it doesn't. It's way in the back, and it's a cement bench with beautifully placed rocks and planting, but that's landscape architecture. It's not art. And also, doesn't public art, does it have to be non-denominational or not? Because the other one is stained glass windows. And the fact is, stained glass windows cannot be seen from the outside unless they're lit up at night. So the only people that can see them are if you're in the church and the sun's shining through in the daytime. So I just think that somebody ought to be helping the Planning Commission in deciding what is appropriate art, qualifying art, and good art. The third thing is the arts in the public open space and recreation need to be kind of supervised as well. The elephant that's in that's in Pines Park, the placement was put there by the acting city manager. Is he an art critic? I don't think so. So I just think the suggestions here, basically reading material, explore, research, inquire, reorganize the procedures on how you interview, what the criteria is, because everybody had a different interview. Somebody that cried got on the commission because they cared. That's not qualifying. The consulting business I had with the partner, we were on the front page of the LA Times, we were on the front page of the Register, and on the front page of the Orange County Business Journal. And so I am qualified, and I really hope that the city changes the criteria of that.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Did you state your name and residence?
Capistrano Beach since 1971.
And your
Lynn
name?
Smith.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Starner. Hi.
Hi. Nadia Starner, Capistrano Beach since 1961. I'm just here to talk about the Parks and Recreation open space. And I'd like to see that master plan. And the reason I'm here is because I can't get it out of my head that the park that was purchased in 1989 on Cannon, via Cannon and Capistrano Beach, was sold off, and parks aren't legally supposed to be sold off, but it was sold off on an old law, the abandoned park law. And I don't remember ever getting a chance to vote on that as a resident. And there's certain laws or rules where that law actually can be entertained or legal when it comes to that. And I know all my residents around wanted that as a park, and now it was sold, I guess, in 2013. So I really want to be part of the open park or see the master plan, because I don't think that the community is in the best interest when it comes to the planning. I'd like to also propose that the city council building be moved to one of the open spaces in the center of town. It would generate a lot of interest with the community. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up is regarding the arts. Lynn is an educated art teacher and has a lot of influence in that area. So when we talk about things like the number 16, the donation of the Vietnam War Memorial, that would be a nice piece of art, and depending on where it would be is very important. And I think somebody like Lynn should be in charge of that. She was also a consultant for a large corporation, the Kohl Corporation, so I think she really knows what she's doing when it comes to placement in art. And I think those things that, like 16, since we are doing a city donation, would be appreciated if our donations would be placed properly, and if our parks would be planned with the community and the children and the youth in mind, and not close to a freeway, and not what you sold off could have been a beautiful area for a symphony area, something that the entire public could use. And I really can't get out of my head because it's right down the street from me, and it's creating more traffic, and it's just something that we could have used. So if you can put the plan in action that the community can have some say, that would be wonderful. I'm so glad to see you both up there.
Thank you, and thank you so much for coming. I have no further public comment slips. Are we finished with the public comment? Okay. Sorry, sir, who are you?
Sorry, Rick Erkeneff, longtime resident in City of Dana Point. Wear quite a few hats in the community. Today I'll come before you wearing my South Coast Water District hat. Just yesterday, the Municipal Water District of Orange County has officially declared that the drought in our area is over. Yay. Who would have thunk it? A great January, unbelievable January, has given the confidence within the state that we're going to be navigating out of the drought. Again, this news just came in yesterday. Our board of directors hasn't agendized how we're going to move forward, but who would have thunk that just one really wet year would get us to the spot. Without the hard work of the city, need to congratulate staff, current city employees, former city employees, worked extremely hard with the water district to make our conservation goals. We're going to be messaging going forward, how we navigate out of the drought. Again, conservation, efficiency, those are really key issues to the future of our water supply in Southern California. There's also an announcement of turf rebates. So again, if you didn't get on the first rebate cycle a couple of years back, those kind of things are going to be happening now. Just was talking to one of my friends in the audience here, and they got two 400-gallon cisterns for rain capture. So there's a lot of opportunity out there, and just want to say again, thank you to the City of Dana Point. You were our biggest water saver, and you guys helped us navigate through the drought. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for all your service in keeping our oceans clean and preserving them. We really appreciate that, and your water board. And our condolences on the passing of Mr. Moore.
Thank you very much. I'll fill out a form. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other? Yes?
One thing, can I just propose that I don't know if it's already done, but the statue for our Hobie, since his glass shop and first factory is down in the village area, maybe to place it instead of where it is, but in one of the islands there where you enter Dana Point. One of the, what do you call it? Medians, yeah.
Okay, not meaning to brush you off, but again, we can't discuss that here, but your suggestion is appreciated, and we will note it. Thank you. Any further public comments?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so the public hearing, or the public comment portion is closed. Are there any public hearings?
No, there is not.
And how about any unfinished business?
None there, too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will move on to the new business. Item 10 on your agenda is our 2017 weed abatement program. Is there a staff report?
There is, Madam Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and give this one a shot. I've done it for a few years, actually, but I've got qualified staff here to fill in the holes if I have any. Before you is a resolution declaring weeds a public nuisance and initiating abatement proceedings. The resolution that's attached to the staff report here establishes a weed abatement procedure as outlined in certain government code sections. Once enacted, it does require the council to declare weeds to be a public nuisance as known on known properties, offers notice to property owners, and an opportunity to be heard as to why their weeds should not be abated. Attached to the resolution is a list of all the properties with specific addresses in the city which require weed abatement. Each of the property owners will receive a letter with instructions to remove their weeds, and failure to remove the weeds within 30 days from receiving that letter will result in the city clearing the property and adding the cost to their tax bills. And with that, we're available to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of staff from the council? Any public comments on this agenda item?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Then the recommended action is that the City Council adopt a resolution of the City of Dana Point as follows. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Dana Point declaring weeds a public nuisance and initiating abatement proceedings.
Madam Mayor, I'll move the recommended action.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any debate on the motion? Then I will call for a vote. Please vote. Resolution passes by a vote of 5-0. Moving on to item 11, professional services agreement for the coastal engineering.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'd like to recuse myself on this matter. I've talked to city attorney. It's not technically necessary, but since it involves Beach Road and properties down there, I'd like to step out for a few moments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tomlinson. Okay, so on to item 11, professional services agreement for coastal engineering services. Do we have a staff report?
We do. I'm going to turn it over to Ursula in a second here, but just to make sure to be clear, there's actually two separate agreements that are being asked for here. One deals with some of the stuff we were talking about on Beach Road regarding individual properties and their submittals, and the work that's done under that contract is reimbursed from those projects. And then the second piece of this relates to certain studies that we have to have done to reply to a FEMA work that's being done. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ursula for the particulars.
Don't have much more to add. Moffitt & Nichol has served as a consultant to the city, really a technical advisor position to Public Works in reviewing issues for Beach Road where we have applications that come in, and we often take a deposit for those, and Moffitt & Nichol reviews wave run-up studies and other geotechnical matters. And so the one contract is for that. It's basically a reimbursable item where we collect a deposit and we pay out of that on applications. The other contract is for some work that FEMA is currently conducting within the city of Dana Point. They're looking along the coast and updating their floodplain maps, and we have asked Moffitt & Nichol to take a look at some of that work to assist us in ensuring that the recommendations that FEMA is making are appropriate for our city. And that concludes my additions. Thank you. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them.
I do have a question. It's more of a clarification so people understand what it is we're approving here. So there's two contracts, and the first contract is for Moffett and Nickel, and they are doing, I understand, review of wave studies for people on Beach Road who are improving their property?
Correct. They act in a very technical advisory capacity, looking at wave run-up studies, and I think they might do a little bit of. Do they do any bluff top issues as well, Kurth? No. So it's just the wave run-up on Beach Road. Yes.
And these studies are required so that the planning department can approve or disapprove of their plans. Is that correct?
Correct. It assists us in our review of those applications. Yes.
And we charge the homeowner for this?
The applicant, correct.
Okay. And then the second one is just engineering services because FEMA is redoing their map.
Correct. FEMA has been charged to look up and down the coast of California to redo their floodplain maps and analysis, and we have found a desire to have some of that work reviewed. In fact, we have a couple disagreements with a couple recommendations that FEMA is making, and Moffett and Nickel has been helpful because FEMA is looking at it from their analysis and data is spotted along the coast, and Moffett and Nickel has very specific data to Dana Point, and there's elevation changes. And so actually, in some of our discussions with FEMA, the data that Moffett and Nickel has will be helpful specifically to Dana Point because it's more precise, specific data.
So as I understand it, we need this data so that we can make the challenges and have evidence. Is that correct?
So that the recommendations that FEMA are making are more precise for our community. Yes.
So this allows us to tell them why we think what they're saying or what they're asking, that we have a dispute with it, that this is our position and here's why?
Correct.
Okay. Yes. Any other questions, Council? Yes. Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going through this contract, and I've noticed this. It's on page 9, and it talks about minimum limits of insurance. And it talks about the general contractor is going to carry a general liability of $1 million, but it doesn't talk about their subs.
I will defer to our City Attorney Patrick Munoz. We generally take agreements, template agreements that have been prepared by the City Attorney's Office and don't.
I believe page 13, subparagraph H, is that may be the relevant paragraph?
And I will mention that Moffett and Nickel does not subcontract any of the work, so there wouldn't be any.
Well, since this is just a general template, are we requiring the subcontractors to carry the same level of insurance as the general would?
Yes, that's in the contract on page 13, as the mayor pointed out, subparagraph H.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Are you satisfied with that?
I am satisfied with that, yep.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
So the limit on the contract for reimbursable is $50,000, essentially. But it could be that we have more requirements than that. Is that correct?
Might ask the city
It's an
attorney.
estimated amount, but I'm not sure. It looks
I
like-
apologize, I sneezed when you were asking your question. What was the question?
So the limit on the first contract, the reimbursable is $50,000. So essentially, it's 4 studies plus some miscellaneous $10,000. If there were more requests coming in, do we need to approve that again, or can that?
We would bring it back to council.
Okay, thank you.
And just for clarification, I think paragraph 5, page 5, is $50,000 per fiscal year, correct? So it's actually potentially 100,000 since this is a 2-year term? I'm on page 5.
It's per year.
Per fiscal year, right?
Per year, not necessarily.
It says fiscal year here.
Where are you at?
I'm on page 5, paragraph 5, payment.
That's correct.
$50,000 each fiscal year? Okay,
Right here.
That is correct.
thank you. One thing I do is read. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Did we have any public comments on this item? Thank you. Mr. Urkunoff, again?
Yes, I'll wear a different hat and then maybe put another hat back on.
Okay.
Again, I'm the Surfrider Foundation South Orange County Chapter Chairman.
Resident of?
Resident of Dana Point. Looks like 34 years since the last study was done, all the way back in 1983. I was a sophomore in Dana Hills High School. It's hard to believe it's been that long.
2 years?
So this is going to be great data, I think, for the city and for the state. As you all know, whether you're on one side or the other, things are changing down at the coastline. South of San Juan Capistrano, the outfall there, San Juan Creek, the beaches are just absolutely eroding. The state park, they've had to be armoring their parking lot. The county has been armoring their parking lot. Homeowners down on Beach Road have been armoring as well. So a study like the first item and the second item in conjunction, I think, will be great data for us to look off into the future. There's an area down there that's obviously prone to flooding and storm events. Put the South Coast Water District hat on. There's lift stations down there, meaning the sewer system. So there's a lot of infrastructure that, again, has been put in place, decades and decades ago that are now going to be affected by things like sea level rise, by coastal erosion. So I think supporting this item is crucial. It shocked me when I saw 34 years has gone by since we've actually looked at what's there. When you look at the coastline in the city of Dana Point, this is pretty much our only really vulnerable area. Everything else has been pretty much armored to the hill, obviously starting with the harbor, but the areas north of that are pretty armored, probably won't have flooding damage and that kind of thing, but the beach road area is, it's just really vulnerable, and I think this is a great item for this city to be a part of. And when the information comes, I know it'll be public, and I know the South Coast Water District will be very keen on understanding what technically is going on down there. So support the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Urkunoff. Any other comments from the public?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So let's take these one at a time, these contracts one at a time. So the first recommended action is that the City Council authorize the acting city manager to execute a consultant services agreement by and between the city and Moffett and Nickel for coastal engineering services for the Community Development Department, which will be reimbursed through the developer fees collected prior to the services rendered. So that was the first contract that we talked about that the homeowner will pay for the wave studies. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Any debate on the motion? Let's vote. Motion carries 4-0, so the contract for these services for coastal engineering, Moffett and Nickel Coastal Engineering for the Community Development Department, which will be reimbursed through developer fees, has been approved. The second item that we were being asked to approve is to authorize the acting city manager to execute a separate consultant services agreement by and between the city and Moffett and Nickel for coastal engineering services associated with the FEMA study that we talked about for the Community Development Department. Do I have a motion on that?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's vote. Motion carries 4-0, and the contract authorizing the acting city manager to execute the consultant agreement between the city and Moffett and Nickel for coastal engineering services associated with the FEMA study has been approved. Welcome back. Moving on now to item 12, consultant services agreement for the design of arterial roadway resurfacing project on Pacific Coast Highway from Niguel Road to the Green Lantern. Do I have a staff report?
Yes, I'm going to ask Mark Denny, our Deputy City Manager, to give a report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As mentioned by the mayor, this is a civil engineering contract for design services for the resurfacing project from Green Lantern to Niguel Road, and we're available if you have any questions.
And this went out to bid, is that correct?
It did. We got 3 bids, and this is the low bid. And we checked references. Both San Clemente and Newport Beach have used this firm before and very pleased with the work.
Have we ever used them before?
No, we have not.
Did they say how long they had used them?
They used them for recent projects. I don't know the duration of those projects, but they were recent projects, and we were certainly pleased with their low bid.
Is there any public comment on this?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Were there any council questions of staff? Okay, hearing none. The first recommended action is to approve the consultant agreement with Cruiser? Kreiser? Kreiser, thank you. Consulting Group for the preparation of the construction documents for their arterial roadway resurfacing project on Pacific Coast Highway from Niguel Road to Green Lantern. Just so I'm clear, construction documents, so these are plans so that someone can actually go out and know what they're supposed to repave?
They will be the basis for the construction bids that we will solicit and bring back to your council for approval.
Okay, so this is to get those plans, that design, so that we can send it out to bid?
That's correct.
And we need to send that out because that expertise is required outside of our staff?
Unfortunately, we don't have the available staff resources as noted in your staff report. We also have another project going on concurrently, and so this is one that we needed to send out.
Do I have a motion to approve the contract?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, we will vote. The motion is carried 5-0, and by motion, we approve the consultant services agreement with Kreiser Consulting Group for the preparation of the construction documents for their arterial roadway resurfacing project on Pacific Coast Highway from Niguel Road to Green Lantern. And the second item is to fund the work from our CIP number 1277, arterial roadway rehabilitation and repairs per the fiscal impact. So if you could just explain a little bit about that, Mr. Denny.
Yes, I believe we have $200,000 budgeted for these services, and again, we are pleased with the low bid, which came in, as I'm pulling up the document, at approximately $56,000. And we put a little bit in for contingency for a total amount of $65,000 under this contract.
Thank you. Any other questions? May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, vote. The ayes have it, 5-0. The motion carries, and the work will be funded through the CIP 1277 arterial roadway rehabilitation and repairs per fiscal impact section, CIP being capital improvement project, right?
That's correct.
Thank you. Let's move on then to item 13, Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan Update. Do I have a staff report on that?
Yes, we do. We're requesting direction from the City Council to initiate an update to our 2005 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. I'm going to go ahead and ask Mark Denny to walk us through our proposal here.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. The city's original Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan was approved by the City Council on September 28th of 2005. 11 years later, the city has added 7 new parks since that plan's adoption, as well as the Nature Interpretive Center. The city has also, since that time, established the Arts and Culture Commission and commissioned public art pieces at 7 parks and the Nature Interpretive Center. Those two, the 7 are not the same. The 7 new and the 7 ones with art in them. The proposed master plan update will be completed by staff with the exception of consultant support for the significant community engagement required, as well as the volunteer work of our Arts and Culture Commission. The Arts and Culture Commission will conduct site reconnaissance of all existing park sites in order to make recommendations on location, themes, and media for future public art installations at city parks. Additionally, as a part of the council's consideration of the next budget, staff will recommend consulting support for the community engagement activities of the plan update. The first, to gather information from the community to update the needs assessment of the plan. This will include 3 components of community engagement. 1, use of the city's existing internet resources, websites, social media sites, for surveys and additional public input. In-person surveys at city-sponsored events, including our concert series, and a statistically valid random telephone survey, which I'll note was done for the original plan back in 2005. In addition, we'll recommend the use of a facilitator to conduct a council study session and the public meetings to continue to gather and refine input on the plan's update. We know there is also significant public interest in new projects throughout the city's park system. From restrooms to playgrounds for both kids and dogs, the needs assessment process can help the council look ahead for the next 8 to 10 years of the plan in order to prioritize projects and programs. Our Parks Manager, Jeff Rossler, will serve as the project manager for the project, and as noted in your staff report, we anticipate completion of the project in March of 2018, and I am available should you have any additional questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bazorek?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Mr. Day, can you just walk me through the thinking behind it? It's a 20-year planning document that's intended to be revised every 5 to 7 years. Why is it set up that way?
As noted in the staff report, there are changes, change conditions, additional facilities that have been added, facilities that, as noted earlier tonight, that were part of the plan that were sold by the city. And so it's an idea to keep it fresh and updated, as well as keep the council on top of the relative priorities for projects in the parks.
Okay, so as we move through this process, if we do make revisions, are we making revisions to this 20-year document, or are we making a new document with a 20-year vision going out? What exactly are we doing here with this process?
We're updating the existing document. We would anticipate another, 8, 10, 12 years from now, probably redoing the entire thing, because it'll probably be time to do that. Doheny Village Plan would likely be completed. The city will be mostly built out, and so it'd probably be time to refresh the whole thing. But for now, we think an update is appropriate.
I guess maybe to try to rephrase my question, if I understood the way it was put together originally, when we solicited community feedback and what types of parks that the community wanted, we were looking out with a vision, with a long-range vision for 20 years. When we do this revision and we go out to solicit the community input, are we also going out with that long-range 20-year vision, or are we simply updating for the next, we have 8 years left on this? I mean,
I think we're checking in to how we're doing against that original 20-year vision and looking forward at least another 10 years to see whether or not the council's priorities have changed, and the council will be able to consider those priorities, considering the public input that's gathered through the process.
Okay. And I do have a question, if you know, how successful have we been in 2005 in looking forward? How many of the things in our plan have been implemented? How many successfully? How many does it look like they had the foresight and we're still moving along, and how many need to be revised?
I can't put a number to it, but as indicated, I think the addition of 7 new facilities, the Nature Interpretive Center, the open space as we now know it, certainly our vision's realized for the city. I think the city's made great progress, and I think that's what makes this a very good time to check in to see how we're doing and see if any directional changes are necessary or if we just need to continue to refine the vision going forward.
Okay, I think I just have one more question, and it goes to the fiscal impact section of the $60,000. And I see on the prior page, it sort of walks us through the process of what we're doing here. Can you give us an idea on what exactly we are voting on tonight? Are we voting to commit $60,000? Or are we simply voting to start this process and looking at it to start the revision? Can you walk me through that a little bit?
Yes, sir. The answer to your first question is no. You're not committing any funding at this point, any funding beyond additional staff resources. So the process between now and June would be for staff to start the look at the document, to look at what, technical edits are going to be necessary, photography, maps, the other things that are going to be necessary as a part of that update. And in your proposed budget, we will include the funding for the community engagement and the facilitation services, and then you'll have the opportunity during the budget to consider those items for funding.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, and Mr. Denny, would you start in, based on our approval of this tonight, to look for the consulting group who would act in this capacity?
Yes, we'll develop the scope first, and then we will solicit bids for that. That'll be both qualification and price-based. We want to see folks that have worked on similar projects.
Okay, so I'm clear. That was a really good question, Mr. Bazorek, because I had the same question myself. So we are not agreeing at this point that we're committing $60,000. We're not even committing any money, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, we are just directing staff to initiate the process.
That's
so
correct.
if we as a council determine that we don't think $60,000 is we don't think it's worth $60,000 to be having somebody else talk to our residents, we're not committing to that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Denny, with my recent appointment to the OC Parks Commission, I can't help but wonder, do we have a mechanism? In the city of Dana Point, we have a state park, we have county parks, and we have city parks. And they're servicing a large cross-section of residents, but we kind of do the same thing. Do we have a mechanism to work with county and state parks to make sure that we don't have a duplication of effort, and maybe try to figure out a way, as we're speaking to everybody involved or the other two entities involved, how do we deliver this product at a more economical cost, but actually make sure that the breadth of service is more diverse instead of looking at it as just, we're only going to look at our parks, and county and state may be doing some of the same things. Do we have anything like that?
I think the answer to your question is there's nothing formal in that regard, and that might perhaps be a good idea for inclusion into an update to this plan, a formal discussion of that collaboration with those other two entities, and we can certainly consider that, as we would also be looking to add the arts and parks component to this plan that did not exist in the original plan.
Well, and thanks for clarifying that. I didn't think it existed. And if we do go down this path, will we be the first city to try to create a mechanism like this?
In my experience, both at the city and at the county, the answer is yes. I'm not aware of any city that has been that forward-thinking in terms of thinking about the collaboration between all the entities that provide similar services.
And so what would it take to develop that internally with the city, and what, give me a time frame on what you think it would take to create something like that?
Well, again, as mentioned in the staff report, we think that, for a fully vetted and available public process, that this is going to be a 12, 13-month process. And we think that given that we've built in a little buffer of time before the budget process, we'd have the ability to sit down with state parks and county parks to explore what something like this might look like, and what these roles or formal mechanisms might look like. I should also add, though, that in the case of the city of Dana Point and the county of Orange, we do have a formal MOU for the collaboration at Strand Vista Park, and there have already been discussions at a staff level on expanding that MOU to be more inclusive of our joint interests throughout the city, because from Poche Beach at the south end of town to Salt Creek Beach at the north end of town, or east and west end of town, however we want to reference it, we have a lot of mutual interests, and there is a great deal of interest both on the county's part and on our part to see that MOU perhaps expand to include, all of our interactions at all those facilities, and so certainly that could be an integrated part of this process.
Okay. Well,
With your council's direction.
I was going to say, yeah, I would like to direct staff to do that if council is agreeable to that, to start trying to develop that mechanism. And the reason I brought it up is the county has over 400 miles of trails and 3 enforcement officers. And so there are needs and services that aren't being fulfilled because they're just such a stretch of resources. And I think if they could help us out in areas that we need it, we can help them where they need it. I think that'd be a good collaboration.
Before we have a motion and a second on that, are there any further questions of staff on this issue? Yeah. Okay, so the recommended action is that the City Council direct staff to initiate this update of the 2005 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. Do I have a motion on this agenda item?
Madam Mayor?
Oh, sorry?
I think
Was there somebody who wanted to speak?
Mr. Urkeneff would like to speak on it. He's going to fill out, he's grabbing his. request.
Another hat?
Yes,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
Apologize. Having reviewed most of that original plan, Rick Urkeneff, I'll put on my South Coast Water District hat. Having reviewed most of that park plan, it's actually an interesting way to take a snapshot back in time. And when we look at the item 4.6, the facilities recommendation, summary, and priority, the priority part of it, page 95, that starts, and then it blends into page 96. It really kind of echoes exactly what Councilmember Vixoric is asking. When you look at the top priorities, one of the main bullet points is to acquire or otherwise arrange for use of a portion of the South Coast Water District property along the San Juan Creek for an aquatic center, community building, lighted ball fields, lighted multi-purpose fields, and potentially a skateboard park. I know there's been a lot of talk about skateboard parks in the past, and it would be great to see that being included. However, I think that bullet point should be pretty much removed from the options for parkland for the city to consider. Of course, we have our groundwater recovery facility, which when it's fully operational, South Coast can produce about 15% of our local water supply, which is great, comes right out of the San Juan Creek. Of course, we've working with the agreement with the County of Orange with the harbor revitalization to help for dry storage of boats in that area. We already have our Lot A pretty much improved, ready to go to start taking boats when the harbor needs to move those boats. And then, of course, the really big ticket item, the potential for about a 4.5 million gallon per day up to even maybe 15 million gallon a day desalination plant. And our district is currently underway with the environmental, along with other planning aspects for that portion of pretty much that whole property is going to be spoken for outside of the potential for city parks like ball fields, tennis courts, or skateboard parks. So I just wanted to have that on the record, and I look forward to seeing what staff comes up with for the future. Because I think, again, to Councilmember Vixoric, it's really, 2005 just seems like yesterday, but when we look forward to what 10, 15 years looks like, it's really good to update these plans because things obviously change. So, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comment on that? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Urkeneff. Any other public comments? Okay. Close the public comment portion on that agenda item. So, is there a motion on this recommended action to direct staff to initiate the update of the 2005 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. Mr. Miller?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make that motion with the addition that we find the mechanism to work with county and state parks to try to make sure we don't have a duplication of effort, and that we can work collaboratively to provide a better product.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, so your motion is to direct staff to update the 2005 Park Recreation Open Space Master Plan and work with county staff?
And county and state staff to prevent a duplication of effort, to provide a better product at a more economical price.
I have a question of staff. If that's the motion and we direct staff to do that, is that a clear enough direction?
I think so, yes.
Okay, so the motion currently is that the city council directs staff to initiate an update of the 2005 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan, working with the county and the state staff to prevent duplication of efforts and unnecessary expense. Is that correct? Okay. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Any debate, further comment on the motion?
I have
Mr.
a
Mayor Pro
couple
Tem?
of amendments I would like to make to it, a motion. So I would like, following off on Councilman Miller's comment, I would like to make sure that the state and county parks are shown and included as we analyze the services, because when you look at the purpose of the plan, it's to provide a certain set of services to our community. So oftentimes the state and county parks provide some of those services, and if they're providing some, then we should look at complementing what services are already there. So I would like to amend this to ask the staff to include the services that are being provided by the state and local parks within the master plan that we do as one. And I have another amendment I would like to make. Is it the right time, or should I wait to find out whether we have a further discussion on?
Okay, well, let me first clarify.
Okay.
Your first amendment, are you adding the words, include services provided by state and local parks?
Yeah, in the master planning, in the parks master plan.
State and county.
Okay, so include the words,
State and county, yes. I'm
state and
sorry.
county
Yes.
parks included in the master plan.
That's correct.
Okay, so okay, do I have a second on the amendment?
Madam Mayor, I think the appropriate procedure would be to find out if the maker of the motion accepts the amendment, and then if the seconder also accepts the amendment.
Yes, I accept the amendment as you.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Is it an amendment to his motion? Okay. Yeah.
Just to be
Sorry.
clear.
Yes.
I've made an amended motion. He's amending my amended motion. Can he amend it one more time after this?
You actually made the main motion.
Right, oh, yeah, sorry, I
You
made the main
amended
motion.
the
He's
staff
amending it.
recommendation.
Would it be cleaner? Well, I get.
So he is allowed now to
Right.
make a motion to amend your
amend
motion
my motion, but my question is, you can only amend so many times.
twice.
Okay, so he'll be okay if he
Yes.
amends again. Yes, I'll accept his amended motion.
Okay. Now, can I ask for the second on the amendment?
I'll resecond that, yes.
Okay. Second on the amendment? Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? Yes?
I have one quick question, Madam Mayor. Perhaps Councilman Miller can answer it. What exactly is it adding again? Can we just clarify for me the difference between the amendment and your original motion?
I think he just changed. I'm sorry, I think he just changed the way I worded it. When I said to prevent duplication of effort, that is basically what he just said, that we're going to add those so we don't duplicate those services at our other parks. I think that's what he said.
Well, here's what here's what I'm taking as the motion on the floor, and correct me if I'm wrong. That the city council consider directing staff to initiate and update the 2005 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan to include services provided by state and county parks included in the master plan, and that the county and state staff will prevent duplication, work with the county and state staff to prevent duplication of effort and unnecessary expense.
Yes. What I think I think the confusion is, when I say prevent duplication of effort, that's basically what I'm saying, is what Paul said, is don't duplicate the same services in a state and county park in a city park.
Okay.
That's basically what I'm saying. But to work with the staffs so we make sure that doesn't happen. They could also be going through this same procedure and going to change their services that they provide. We need to be having those discussions.
Okay, not to sound like a stickler, but I want a clear motion here.
Yeah, let's get it right.
Okay, so, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, on your amendment, was your amendment any different than the main motion that was made by Mr. Miller?
I believe, well, my intent was to clarify that, as Mr. Miller has now said what his intent was, I think together we've put the intent of including the state and county parks in the updated master plan to ensure that we don't duplicate services that are provided by those parks. And I think Councilman Miller's additional was that we contact the state and county parks to make sure if they're updating their plans that we are aware of their updates, so that we don't make an assumption about what they're doing and then find out that they're changing something that we are unaware of.
Madam Mayor, if I could,
Yes,
for
please.
my own edification,
Yes, it is-
perhaps this is the way to clarify it for me. I'd like to ask Mr. Denny, when you heard the amendment, was that going to change what you intended to do in any way? And if so, can you explain what you were going to do differently from Councilman Miller's motion to the Mayor Pro Tem's motion?
It would be additive to Councilman Miller's motion, which is to say that we anticipate providing a better inventory of the city's parks as a part of this update. And so we would include in that inventory and the incorporation of those services that are provided therein, the state and county facilities, so that all of the facilities are inventoried in this document. Is that consistent with your desire?
Okay.
I believe he's asking.
Asking me?
Councilman
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
All right, so let me try this motion once more and see if we have a clear motion here. So the motion, as amended, is that the city council is directing staff to initiate an update to the 2005 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. That master plan will include state and county parks into the master plan inventory, and further, city staff will work with county and state staff to prevent any duplication of effort and unnecessary expense. Mr. Miller, does that sound like your motion?
Yes. That is my motion. The question I'm starting to have on my own motion is this the right place to try to create that? It's not really a committee, but that mechanism to start working with state and county parks. And I want to formalize that
Well, we
somehow.
want, I'm sorry.
I want to formalize that effort somehow.
If I might offer, the formalization of the relationship may not be part of an eventual master plan, but
Right, and that's what
certainly
I'm
we
starting
should,
to think
I
maybe
think it's
this
a
is
good
not
idea for us to start working on it concurrent with us doing the master plan. And I like the idea of, the way I'm looking at this, including in our master plan, all assets available to the public that represent
Mhm.
parks, open space, and related services. And then within that, going to your motion, for us to develop relationships where we can to get cost efficiencies and even improvements in services by not duplicating efforts, but, working together a little better.
So as I hear it, Mr. Miller,
So the motion is correct, what you said. Okay. My initial intent was that we would create or formalize this relationship some other way as we move forward in the future that we take this into consideration. Is that the right place for a plan update? I don't think it's probably the right place to put that in a plan update.
well, Mr. Miller, as I heard your motion, the concern from the staff recommended and the additional language was that city staff work with the county and staff to prevent duplication of effort and unnecessary
That's what I'm
expense.
saying.
was
That is
sum
okay.
and
That
substance
is
of yours.
exactly what
Okay.
I want to have come out of this.
Good.
Exactly.
And the Mayor Pro Tem's concern, and what comes out of that with his additional language, is that the inventory of the master plan of parks will include the state and county parks and open space into that inventory.
That's correct.
Okay. So,
I think you have it correct in terms of your composite there.
okay, so here's the motion that I have before the council. That the city council consider directing, the city council direct staff to initiate an update to the 2005 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. And that master plan will include state and county parks and open space into the master plan. And further, that city staff will work with county and state staff to prevent duplication of effort and unnecessary expense. Does that satisfy
Yep.
your concern, Mr. Miller?
Satisfies mine, yes.
And Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
Satisfies.
And is that clear?
Clear as mud, but I'll go with
Yes.
it.
I thought it was clear, but if you have a question?
It is clear, I'm just trying to be funny.
Okay, I do want to clear,
No,
because this has been convoluted.
I got it.
Okay. And Mr. Vazorek, is that clear? Are you good with
Ready
it?
to call the vote.
Okay, good. All right.
Well, I think he has another amendment to it, so we
All
might
right.
have to do it again.
Any discussion on the motion as amended? Well, I guess, yeah, a motion as amended.
I have another amendment. It's unrelated, but I'll make it after.
If it's unrelated, then point of order, we can't hear it right now. It has to be related.
It's about parks.
Okay, but it has to be related to the motion and the amendment. So if it's directly related
I understand.
and you're amending it, I'll put it in there. Otherwise, we'll do it
We should
next.
vote next, exactly what I'm asking.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, let's vote. All right. It was like birthing a baby. Okay. So the motion carried 5-0, and the motion that carried is that the city council has directed staff to initiate an update to the 2005 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan, which master plan will include state and county parks and open space in the master plan inventory, and further, that city staff will work with county and state staff to prevent duplication of effort and unnecessary expense. Motion carried. Thank you. All right. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have another motion or
I have
item?
another amendment I would like to make to this 13 on the updates to the parks. I would like, as we, as the staff puts together a proposal to go out to look for a consultant to provide the services, that they include the requirement that these documents be able to be presented and reviewed online so we can get a broader set of feedback from our audience. So the consultants and the requirements to the consultants, I would like to ask that one of the requirements to the consultants is that we be able to review these master plans online as they're developed.
Okay, so I'm clear. Are you asking staff to put the consultants?
So one
Or-
of the budget items in here, or one of the actions here, is for them to begin to look for a consultant to assist with this update to the master plan. And I would like to ensure that as we look at consultants, that we bring in consultants who are capable of using technology to present and review the plan. So our acting city manager has a
Just
comment.
a real quick question, because I've heard some of this in discussions I had with Ross Teasley a while back. So you talking about like a collaborative working draft of a document that the public can comment on a working draft as it's going through our process?
I would like as drafts become between, formal meetings, for them to be able to see and then give us comments back on it to the staff working on these plans, so that we can reach a broader audience in terms of input to the plan.
Okay, just a comment on that is, I would recommend that we make it something that we desire to see, but as far as making it a requirement, I'm guessing at this point in the evolution of that concept of, a group review, not all of the possible best proposers that we might want to have an engagement on this. I wouldn't want to limit the number of proposers by making it a requirement that that be available. If that would be okay with the council, that it's more of a desirable, we would like that to be part of this discussion as we're hiring, as we're looking to hire somebody.
I'm acceptable to modify it such that it would be desirable if they would be able to.
And on that same
present
line,
and
it might be something the city, if the consultant isn't up on that just yet, it might be something we can push forward, given some of the technology that's out there that's being shared amongst some communities that I've seen in a kind of a beta format, as opposed to a big commitment by the city to go and implement that at this point.
Yes, that'd be, as you're aware, I'm very anxious to tackle the general plan and the strategic plan also, because the strategic plan's from 2005 at the same time frame as the parks plan, and the general plan is was from 1991, I think. So they both need to get updated soon. And so as we look at how we do these and what we can learn and what we can leverage in terms of making it more cost-effective and including a wider audience, I'd like to start. And this is the first one that's come up, so that's the reason for bringing it up and asking that they look into that.
Okay, so let me ask you if this is a fair statement of your motion. There's a new main motion to direct the staff, if possible, to find consultants capable of using online technology as part of the park update process so the public can review the process as it occurs.
Yes, that's my motion.
Do I have a second on that? I will second it. Any discussion? Mr. Miller?
So I support what you're saying. I think that's important. But what you're asking for, I came out of a world that we used to do this, and one of the most difficult things to do is have multiple people commenting on a document and notating it. And this can be an incredibly expensive operation. And it may not be a good thing for us either, in terms of if you get so much input onto a document, it almost becomes so convoluted, it's tough to understand what's really trying to be communicated. Are you thinking, and this is just what I think, what we're probably more likely to get on this anyway because of a cost, are you talking about having a forum where the document's posted on a forum and then people can comment and just make comments, kind of like a Nextdoor? You could post it on Nextdoor and then have everybody comment on it and something like that?
Yeah, I think that it would be too complicated if they were to go in and revise the plan and in real, which is possible, and then you sort out the revisions.
Yeah.
We would never put them back together.
Right.
I agree. But I would like a forum where we get ideas and input. I think we ultimately, it isn't a lot different than if we were setting in the meeting with the public and we had various people get comments and we got to sort them out into something that actually fits together. It just can reach a broader audience.
So, yes, you're
Yeah,
looking for.
so yes, I'm
like
looking for
okay,
more of a
okay.
forum where you can.
Okay,
yes.
that's something where they're actually going to be able to go in and modify the document and put their input in.
No,
and
I think we would never unwind it.
Right,
yes,
okay, all right.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, thank you. And I would also like to speak to this motion to say that it is the words "if possible." So at some point when bids are brought back to us, you can use that as your basis for a yes or no vote. But we're not directing that that is a requirement, correct?
That's correct.
Yes?
I too share Councilmember Miller's thoughts on that. Too many authors for a document would probably be very cumbersome, so thank you for your comments, Mayor Pro Tem.
Any other discussion? Okay. Shall we vote on a motion to direct staff, if possible, to find a consultant capable of using online technology as part of the parks update process so the public can review the process as it occurs and make comments?
One more quick question.
Yes.
With the phrase, or the term, if possible, will that disqualify other bidders if they can't do it?
I'm actually going to term it, it's not required, it's desired.
Right.
And we'll make sure that it's clear in the.
Okay,
in the
because
RFP
I'm
document.
I'm concerned that if you say if possible and we only find one that can do it, they're the only qualified bidder and we're going to have to take it.
That was why we wanted to go in that direction and not make it a requirement at this point.
Right, okay, thank you.
Does, if possible, satisfy everybody that it's not mandatory?
Yeah.
Okay. Any further comment? All right, shall we vote? Motion passes 5-0, so the staff is hereby directed that it is desirable and if possible to find a consultant capable of using online technology as part of the map update process so that the public can review the process and comment as it occurs. Anything further? Can we move on to 14? Okay, moving on to agenda item 14, Association of California Cities Orange County membership. Is there any staff report on that?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Before you is a request to authorize us to enter into a membership in the Association of California Cities, the Orange County chapter. Their mission as a group is to provide Orange County's 34 cities with a regional voice on public policy issues through education, policy development, and advocacy. Some of the work they do includes working with the county itself, Air Quality Management District, Southern California Association of Governments, the state legislature, Governor's Administration, Congress, and federal agencies and departments. Some of the issues that they've discussed recently and provided forums on include the sober living homes discussion, various public safety issues, the new marijuana laws. Just be clear, membership is on an annual basis, and the city could terminate its membership at any time. The city had actually been a member for several years, and then 2014 decided to opt out. Before you, the request is for a $9,700 membership authorization for staff to enter the membership and to pay the $9,700 fee.
Any questions of staff? Any public comments?
No, Madam Mayor.
I would like to say that I had put this item on the agenda. I have since learned that it was about $10,000. And I also have since learned of at least one other group that I would like to explore before I vote to commit that kind of money. We are also members of League of City. So I am hereby making a motion to indefinitely postpone vote on joining the Association of Cities until further time when I have information on another group that I would be interested in putting before the council. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
I'll go first, Madam
I'm
Mayor.
sorry.
We've been a member of this association before, correct? And
correct.
Do we have a representative from the council on this?
Not right now.
Not right now, but if we did, we would. We joined.
Yes.
How many years were we members of this?
I forget the year that they formed. I believe it was sometime around 2010, 2011. And we were in there until 2014, I believe. My dates could be off a little bit, but from their inception until a couple years ago.
And was there a reason for our withdrawal from?
I went back and looked through the minutes. I didn't see a stated reason. It was just mentioned at a council meeting, I believe January 2014, that the city would be opting out.
Okay. No further
Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I'd be interested or curious in what group are you looking at?
I'm looking at a group called the Concerned California Coastal Cities. And this is a group that right now is in the process of coming together. It is Oceanside, San Clemente, Seal Beach, Laguna Beach, Newport Beach, and now Dana Point. And one of my considerations is that this group is concerned solely with issues that concern coastal cities, which may be more relevant to us than concerns brought by cities that are all of Orange County, particularly in light of the fact that we belong to League of Cities. And I just want to make sure before I vote to commit $10,000 of our money that I feel it is the best value for the money.
You're aware that Concerned California Coastal Cities was brought before the council before and was voted down?
I am.
And are you also aware that League of Cities has basically this same committee of coastal cities all up and down the coast that have basically the same issues that I've seen on the agendas for the California coastal cities?
I am. I feel that all up and down the state is too large. There are very big coastal cities that tend to run a statewide organization who have, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people in their city. Dana Point has 35, whereas this is a very localized group of cities in our locale that have our very similar issues that I can see us networking with because they are geographically located where I can network with them. Whereas if I get too far north, it's just not possible. And there are some very key issues that we are all facing that I want to see us working together on. And I see this potentially as a great way to pool our resources and not keep fighting the same fights individually. So I would like to explore this group. It may turn out that I don't feel it's a group I want to join, but I wanted to give it a chance before I join another group.
I understand your position. However, the California Coastal or the League of Cities does this exact same thing. We're already a member. We've already spent the money to use their lobbying capabilities to address the local issues that we have. I've looked at, I've gotten all the emails that you have from this organization. I've looked at their agendas. Their issues are the same issues everybody's having up and down the coast right now in the coastal zone. And I just don't see the value in joining another committee to duplicate the effort that the League of Cities can do for us today. If we can go to the League of Cities, if you want to have, I'm not sure how big that committee is right now, and who's on it, but if you want to have a smaller subcommittee with that, that's something we can work with on them and do a Southern Orange County or Southern California committee. I'm not seeing the value in joining another group. I just don't get it. I don't see what they're offering to us because they're going to have the same lobby effort that we already have.
Okay, let me clarify. The motion currently before the council is not to join the California Coastal community or concerned cities. That is not even at issue. The motion is to indefinitely postpone a vote on joining the Association of California Cities at this time. You asked why I was thinking that. That was why I was thinking that. But the motion is to postpone a vote on joining the Association of Cities of Orange County. That is the motion that has been laid before the council and seconded.
And so give me the reason for the indefinite suspension of it. I mean, how long do you think you're going to need to go look at the California coastal cities?
Well, it can be put on the next agenda. I mean, it can be agendized any time, but indefinitely means that for the remainder of this session, it will not be voted on. That is the motion.
So you're offering to table it?
Well, it's actually just called indefinitely postpone. I'm not tabling it. I am indefinitely postponing it for this session, and then it can be brought up and when it's agendized at the next session. So that is what's before us, is to vote to indefinitely postpone that.
Heather's here tonight from ACCOC, and I think it'd be worth our time to actually hear what she has to say.
Just got a slip.
Oh, okay. I was just going to see if she wanted to come up. All right, great.
Okay. So I was clarifying the motion. We're
Okay,
not talking
understand.
about
I understand.
concerned California coastal cities.
Okay, I understand,
Okay.
but I would like to hear from Heather.
All right, I have a request from Heather Stratman. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Thank you. I'm Heather Stratman. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Association of California Cities, Orange County. And I appreciate the item being agendized this evening and the opportunity to speak. Just briefly and to your concerns, Madam Mayor, one opportunity that I think ACCOC provides for the cities of Orange County is the opportunity for cities who have shared interests, such as coastal communities, to form working groups and subcommittees within ACCOC for their own interests. And not much different than whatever this coastal communities group does. We have the opportunity, the infrastructure, the expertise, and the ability to bring those coalitions together within our own organization. That's an added automatic benefit as being a part of our group. I'll give you an example. We have a countywide homelessness task force that we have 80 to 100 people who gather on a monthly basis. We're taking that task force and we're breaking it into the service areas that have been identified in the County of Orange's homelessness task force report, and we are working collaboratively with them. So we're breaking down the county into smaller groups so that we can be more specific to certain sub-regions of the county. South Orange County is not that doesn't have the same issues or concerns perhaps as North Orange County. The coastal communities have their own interests and issues, and we certainly have the ability to form those coalitions within ACCOC to support your needs and your efforts. And so I would offer that up as something automatically when you come in as a member, we can provide you those services. If you're not a member, we can't sort of represent you and bring you all together. So I would just point that out. And then if there are questions that I can answer, I would be more than happy to address them.
Thank you. And my motion is no reflection at all on your group.
Certainly.
It's just, for me, I am not yet prepared to make a decision. That was what my motion is. So,
Question. Mr. Upman, you work more at a local level, at a county level. Have you had any success in lobbying the county for different issues? And if you have, what are they?
Well, I'll give an example. This is not specific to the County of Orange, who is also a member of the organization, full disclosure. We are lobbying the County of Orange right now on a flood control easement issue, of which the county wants to charge other public agencies fees for easements within flood control areas. We are fighting the county on that right now. But a recent success is the Air Quality Management Plan came out in mid-2016. It identified that not only would the regional water quality control boards have authority over your MS4 permits, but AQMD would also have a second oversight and authority over those MS4 permits. We fought that very hard. We went to our board representatives at AQMD and got that taken out of the draft AQMP. Those are examples of where we are fighting for the city's interests on a regional basis. We also deal with state and federal issues. We are sponsoring 2 pieces of state legislation this year. Assemblymember Tom Daly will be carrying one of those bills, and Assemblymember Sharon Quicksilver will be carrying the other one.
Thank you. Did that answer your question? Any further questions, discussion? Mr. Bezort?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I hope this isn't duplicative, but just in my mind, I think to preface this, I know what the motion is. We're going to put this off, and if not, then we're going to have to make a decision whether we want to join or not. So if we're going to spend $10,000, I want to know what we're going to get for that $10,000. As you've already heard, already know, we are a member of the League of Cities, and maybe you could just break it down for me. How do you differ from the League of Cities? What added value are we getting from being a part of your organization as well as the League of Cities?
I think it's a very good question. I get it often. So the League of California Cities represents approximately 482 cities across the state of California. If you can envision the diversity of 480 cities in this state, they always will go with the highest common denominator. So typically on any given year, they will pick 3 priority issues. Normally those are housing, transportation, and some sort of economic development issue, and those will be their issues. Where the league will not come in, they will not step in, is they will not be at the forefront of our homelessness issues. They will not be providing education to the elected officials on the implementation and implications of Prop 64, recreational cannabis. We provide these on the ground here in Orange County that is specific to our needs here locally. And I think it's much more representative of the 34 cities and our values as a county versus what we're dealing with at 480 cities across the state. The League of California Cities is a great organization. I'm a former employee, actually, many, many years ago, so I believe in what they do. But I also believe that they have to kind of keep a very wide membership base happy, and they don't really get into the specific local issues of any one county or even any one city.
Okay. I have 2 more questions, and I've got to think what order to ask them in so it makes sense. Now, I know the mayor's motion is to postpone this indefinitely, and that's the motion. The stated reason was so that some investigation could be done into the concerned California coastal cities. Have you heard of that organization?
Yes, I have.
Do you know what cities are members of that organization?
I don't know the full list of the cities. I do believe it's an advocacy organization.
But you know what cities are members of your organization, right?
Yes, I do.
Do they? Well, I guess you've answered the question. I'm wondering if they're the same city. Are the cities that are in the concerned California coastal cities the same as your organization?
I believe there is probably several of them. Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, San Clemente, yes.
And do you, this is my second question now, if, let's assume that's the case, do you have subcommittees where we would be able to break off with those cities and form, I guess, and do what I'll just call it the 4C, CCCC does? Tell me how the organization works.
Absolutely. So the organization is a membership-driven organization, and to be quite candid, if I have a majority of coastal cities who say we have a vested interest in, figuring out how to work better with the Coastal Commission, or, advocating on certain state legislation that is specific to coastal cities, we are going to pull you all together, facilitate and collaborate around those issues, and help you sort of maneuver through that, but it is a membership-driven organization, so I don't dictate the organization's policies and priorities. That comes through our membership and is endorsed by our board of directors. And this happens frequently. I'll have the city managers group come to me and say, okay, we want you to develop a model drone ordinance that the entire county can endorse. So we get to work and we bring all the players who want to participate in that process. We facilitate it, we draft it, we go through multiple working group meetings, and ultimately the cities will have a product back. So it really doesn't matter what the issue is. It's the members drive those emerging issues that they deem important and relevant.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, hearing none, I will call for a vote. The motion is to postpone vote on joining the Association of California Cities Orange County indefinitely, which will mean we don't vote on it at this session, but it could be agendized as early as the next session. So a yes will postpone and a no will defeat the motion. Okay, so the motion is carried by a vote of 3-2. At this time, we will postpone the vote on joining the Association of California Cities, Orange County, for this session, but it can be agendized as early as the next session. Thank you, and thank you for your comments, Ms. Ruchigo. Does anybody need a break before we continue on? Okay. All right. Item 15 is the resolution to amend the member selection process and purpose of the city's Financial Review Committee and designated committee members. This was an item that we voted on and approved in concept with a direction to staff to bring us this resolution that encapsulated all of the items of the approval of this committee that we approved last meeting. Is there a staff report?
You just gave my staff report.
Sorry.
We took the motion and put it into a resolution, and it's before you now. In addition, all the council members did submit names for committee members, and those are also included as the second action. So with that,
Excellent.
I'll turn it back over to you.
Excellent report. Thank you. Any public comment?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. I would like to then make a motion that we approve. Oh, I do have one question. Madam Clerk, I had asked that the words.
There was one additional
Yes.
change that I did leave out a statement. There's a separate memo from me at your dais there that adds the first meeting of this newly formed or reformed committee would be by the end of the month.
Okay.
So that is.
So that's
by-
now in the
By memo is
resolution.
added on to the end of the
Great.
resolution.
Thank you. So therefore, I am making the motion that we approve the resolution that we have here as action document A to amend the member selection process and purpose of the City Financial Review Committee and designated committee members. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion?
I do have
Mr.
several,
Collinson?
I do have a couple of questions. Number one, in the resolution itself, near the bottom, it says, City Council intends to appoint 5 full-time Dana Point residents. How do we determine who's a full-time resident? Is there any, I mean, what do the members have to submit to show that they're full-time members?
I would think, and we could ask city attorney, voting?
Well, it's really up to the council on what you want that to mean. I mean, for most of the committees that, you know, like city commissions, planning commission, things like that, being on the city council has to be your primary residence, your domicile for purposes of voting. You know, if you want to be more specific than that, if you don't want people who, live half the year in Canada and half the year here on the committee, you should say so.
Correct. Okay, is that satisfy you?
Well, yeah, and then, but how do we prove that? I mean, is there a way, I mean, when we've done other committee appointments, we use them have submit a document that's kind of a CV. It has their history, their employment history, their relationship to the community. We don't, as far as I know, we don't have that. I don't know some of these people on the committee that are suggested as appointees. I don't have any problem per se with anybody, but I don't know some of these people that we're appointing to this committee. So I'd like to find a little more information about them, or have them at least submit something where we can look at, say, okay, they're a full-time Dana Point resident, they've done this, just so I could have some information on them, because what we're proposing is to have them review very sensitive financial documents. So I'd like to know a little bit more about some of the committee members that are being appointed.
Madam Mayor, may I just make a comment?
Yes.
That in relation to our commission subcommittees, that the council, we have terms on, and for instance, we have the planning commissioners, and we have 2 seats open, and we have 2 seats open for traffic improvement subcommittee members. The 2 items it says on the application is, well, number 1, you have to be 18 years old, and number 2, you have to be a registered voter in the city of Dana Point. Those are the 2 qualifying areas that a person that wants to apply for any of our commissioners or subcommittees have to meet. And I believe I did check, all of these 5 members are registered voters at their address in Dana Point.
Okay, that answers part of my question. That's good. I'll reserve any further time for after hearing other council members' questions.
Okay, and I would just also state that when we approved the the motion last time, a specific item in the motion was that each council member got to pick their own choice, and that and that it was not required to have approval of council for anyone's choice on this committee, and that the member served at the pleasure of the council member who has appointed that committee member, but no longer than that council member's own term on the council.
I wasn't saying that we would take a vote on these members. I just want to get some more background information on some of the people that we've appointed to this, or will considering appointing to this committee.
I'm sure that could be provided to you. The motion at this point is to approve the resolution as it is written, and with the amendment that the first meeting is no later than 2/28/17. And we have a second on that. Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Bezos?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's, I guess I have some questions as to details that perhaps staff can help me with, especially if the first meeting is going to be on February 28th. The document that sort of lays the groundwork, or not groundwork, actually tells the committee what they are supposed to do, would be the statement of safekeeping and investment of public funds, our investment policy. Is that what we would rely on?
I don't believe that is the intent of the motion that was made. That is one of the documents, but my understanding from the discussion that took place and from what we have here would be pretty much everything that's financial for the city. So financial statements, the budget, and then you drill in from there. It wasn't clear to what extent. I just made the assumption to the full extent.
Let me try it another way, because I'm guessing that if they're going to meet, just like we meet, they're going to have some rules about what constitutes a quorum, for example. How often they're going to meet. How do they go about tasking staff with things? What information do they have access to? I mean, there's some details. I feel like we agreed in principle that this was a good idea, and now we're here tonight to try to hammer out what some of those details are. And if we're going to put that down in writing, is there enough time for staff to do that by February 28th? That was really my first question. Well, actually, my first question is, are we going to do that? What document are we going to use? And if so, is there enough time to get that done by February 28th?
From the resolution in front of me here, and assuming I can get a quorum, which typically would be a majority, and I'm assuming 3, but Patrick could say otherwise, would be to meet with them, and typically we would ask, for them to vote amongst themselves on who would chair, and then from there, talk about work plan, I guess. I can make some, I'll probably would want to make some recommendations in regards to presenting them with audited financials, with unaudited interim financials, with our budget, pretty much give them all of our published documents, and then I guess have a discussion on what the group wants to look at.
Maybe you can
not
see my
trying to make
world.
it up, but that's what I have to work with.
I'm worried about them showing up at the first meeting and not really knowing what exactly they're doing there, and who's leading the meeting, and what's on the agenda, and all those types of things. And, if I'm wrong about this, like I said, I thought we agreed in principle we were going to do this, but I imagine that this was on the agenda tonight to try to hammer out some of these details so we could get this committee moving. If that's not the understanding of the rest of the council members, then I apologize, but that's what I understood we were doing tonight. So those are my comments for now.
Thank you very much. My intent is that these are the experts. They will be working with our acting city manager, and it is for them to determine what it is they will view as the best approach to conduct the mission, which is to be the Financial Oversight Committee, and who will chair and what information they want. That the reason I have started this is because I don't have that expertise. I'm not going to micromanage their expertise. I am counting on these people to give me information that I need to make good financial decisions. And if there are issues, they can always bring that back to the council. It's no later than 2/28 because I want to put a date in there so that it just doesn't languish. But that is my intent here, and I would like to see them get going because we need to do budgets and I need information, and that was the intent of this committee. Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
We could, we have to figure out how to, again, put this in the right order, but we could set an objective of the first meeting to have, to ask the staff to work with them to come back with an organization and sort of a charter for the group so that they could get together, hold their first meeting, line out how they hope to work together and what they hope to accomplish, and then, with staff working with them, bring it back as the first report, because we've asked them to report on each of the meetings as to how they've, how they've organized, what the goals that they've set for themselves are. So we could add on here, a recommendation that they that the staff work with them to produce the outline of the organization and the charter.
Okay, so, I first of all, this committee has no authority to do anything. It is a committee that is to provide oversight and information to the council, and the anticipation was when they do their work, they will bring information to us in the form of a report after they meet, and if they feel that there is something that this council needs to hear or know, that they will be part of the agenda and a report to us.
I'm in agreement with the concept of the committee, but I think Mayor Pro Tem's comments are very well taken. I think that they may be the first meeting they need to come up with what the purpose of the committee, what they're going to be doing, and come back to the city council with that report. I think that's a wise idea.
Yeah, I have no objection to them coming back and reporting to us what they have decided to do at the first meeting and how they have decided to organize themselves, if that's what you're saying. Correct. Okay. So is there further discussion? Yes, Mr. Miller.
This item kind of shocked me a little bit in terms of I'm with Mr. Vixork on this. I thought we were going to get together and define what this group was going to do. This is confusing to me that we're going to put 5 people in a room and say, you guys figure it out. You tell us what you want to do. I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, we're creating a committee to provide us with information that we need, and we need to set some ground rules for that on how they go about how they go about doing it. And I just don't see enough in here to really say, okay, this committee is ready to go. They can go to their first meeting. They can set up their leadership structure, however they want to do that. But they're going to have they're going to have some guidelines to follow, or I guess to follow, when they hit the ground running and they start reviewing these documents. This is the type of information we want. This is what we want you looking at. If you think we haven't fulfilled, or we haven't given you enough latitude, come back and tell us what else you think you want. But I think we need to set those ground rules initially to determine, so they know what we expect out of them. Right now, you know, the people we've appointed, and quite frankly, I don't know that they're experts. I know the guy I appointed personally, and I know he's in the financial industry, and I know he is an expert. I don't know the other 4 members and what their background is well enough to say, hey, these are financial experts. So I think we need to set up some guidelines and let them start their first committee meeting and then come back and say, you know what, this isn't broad enough for what we really need to be doing. I think we need to come back and maybe have a special session just to sit down and talk about this specifically. And if our appointees want to be there and have input, that's a great time to start doing this, and then we can set that document up. Otherwise, you know, this is pretty open-ended. And, you know, to say they don't have any authority, well, do they have the authority to pick up the phone and call the CFO and say, I want to do this right now, get me this document within 7 days? You know, can they do that to them every day of the week? I don't know. I mean, what is their authority? What can they do? Do they need a consensus on what items they're going to start looking at? Or do they all just get to go off and do their own thing? Those are things we need to figure out and define, and I don't know the answer to any of those. But you can't, I think it's, I really think it's I don't know what's the right term for it. I'll come up with it. I think it's almost, it's not reckless. That's not the term I'm looking for. It's not, it's an irresponsible thing to do, to throw 5 people in a room and say, you figure this out, when this is something this council is supposed to be defining. That's kind of our job, and give them their direction. And I think, you know, I think this is a good committee. I think it's a great idea, but I think we need to develop that document with our appointees and say, this is what we want, and we're going to define this. I just think we're a little premature trying to force this onto the 27th. I don't think that's enough time to get everybody up to speed and get them going. I think we need to have a special session to sit down and talk about it.
Thank you. I'm going to speak to the motion. I completely disagree. These, in my opinion, are experts chosen by each of us. We agreed that we would each appoint 1 person and that no council member would have the right to say that that person shouldn't be appointed, that they are tasked with being the public financial watchdog committee and submit reports to the city council after each meeting. We agreed to these very specific statements in the motion, and we directed staff to provide a resolution that included those specific statements, which staff has done. I'm not in a position to tell a financial committee what it is they should and shouldn't look for, because if I knew that, I wouldn't need the financial committee. So I am relying on them and their expertise to sit down in a room with the city manager, who has agreed to do this, and say, we are charged with being the public's financial watchdog, and we are going to overlook and report back, and here is what we need, and as a group, they will come to that consensus.
Well, and I would agree with that to the point where the group has to come to the consensus. It doesn't say that in here. It's not part of this.
That's
You know,
why.
It's the same thing we go through up here. We have to have a majority a majority vote to enact anything. So are we saying that they have to go through the same process when they're in their committee and they say, we want to take a look at different things? Are they going to have to vote on that and have a majority to say, these are the issues we're going to look at this month or quarter, whatever it turns out to be? Or are they all going to be able to go off in their own direction and bring it all back? We have to make those decisions. And, you know, I also see something else in here that really kind of bothered me. It says, to revamp the currently configured financial review committee so that hereafter it will be standing committee meeting no more often than once a month with the city manager, unless 4 members vote to meet less often. What's the reasoning for 4? Everything else we do is a majority vote. And you're putting 5 volunteers in a room. Why wouldn't you just leave it as a majority vote? If 3 of them say, you know what, I don't want to meet this month, we don't have enough going on, let's meet next month or quarterly or whatever they decide to do. I don't understand why all of a sudden we need to have a supermajority to change a meeting date. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I won't support that piece of it. So, for sure. But I think that, you know, there's a lot more to this that needs to be defined just procedurally than what we have in this document right now. And I think we need to take the time to do that.
Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Okay. Yes, we do have a speaker. Ms. Denise Urkeneff, thank you.
Good evening, Council. Denise Urkeneff, Dana Point, California. I'm just reading through this, the staff report and the resolution that was passed at the last City Council meeting. And basically, the committee will consist of 5 members of the public who live full-time in Dana Point, with each council member appointing 1 committee member, which each one of you have done already. Tony Nelson is appointed by Mayor Deborah Lewis. Lester Hill is the appointment from Mayor Pro Tem Paul Wyatt. Gordon Roth is the appointment by Councilman Mueller. Lawrence Rolap by Councilmember Tomlinson, and Gregory Wall by Councilmember Vic Sorick. And, you know, of note, each committee member is going to be given access to financial information reasonably requested to carry forth out the committee's purpose, other than attorney-client privileged information, at least a week before the regular scheduled meeting. The city's statement of safekeeping and investment of public funds investment policy will be presented at the next FRC meeting for review and consideration. So that basically spells out what the agenda item is for the next meeting of this committee. I do want to make a couple of comments. I think this is a great idea, and it's already been voted on. I'm confident that each one of you have chosen a very respectable representative. I personally know 3 of the 5 members who are appointed. Based on our committee appointments with the city, we do have an FPP standard, I believe, Form 700 that gets filled out for, you know, committee work, and also, you know, the typical application that, you know, that applicants fill out for planning committee and whatnot, and financial service to the city. And I would just expect that and the gifts, the $390 gift limit per year be followed for FPPC. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Urkeneff. Any other debate on the motion? Yes, Mr. Bezora.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I think to sort of pick up on what Councilman Miller was saying, I really think we need a little more detail. You know, when something like this meets, I think we need like a founding document that says, I know the policies before we decided to change the committee said, this is who's on the committee. This is how we appoint them. Those are the kind of things that we need. We've changed the purpose of the committee. We don't really have anything specific. I'd like to put in front of my member, at least, so that he could have it in front of him and know specifically what he wants to do. So I'm not going to vote for this tonight. Now, of course, that doesn't mean we're, you know, voting against the committee. The committee's a good idea, and we want to go forward with it. I think what I would like to see is as I said before, I sort of expected we were going to hash out some of these details tonight. It doesn't look like we're going to. I think what I'd like to suggest is if perhaps we can get a consensus here, instead of us sitting around at a special meeting to try to figure it out, I mean, maybe we can direct staff to come back with a document and present it to us that we can then debate. So we at least have a founding document for this committee that we've created, so they know exactly what they're going to do. So, that's what I would propose we do. And again, because I'm voting no on this tonight, it's just because I'm concerned we don't have that specificity yet. The committee, we all agree, when we all did agree on it, it's a good idea and it's going to go forward. But I think we need to do it right and not just do it the way we have it. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, I will speak to your two examples that said the Financial Review Committee, before it was revamped, it says who's going to be on the committee and how they are going to be appointed. Well, this committee also says who's going to be on the committee and how they are appointed. So those two items are already decided in this resolution and by our previous motion. So I recommend that we leave the mission up to the committee, who has the expertise to determine what along with the city manager, what their mission is going to be, and that they bring that back to us, but that we give them the approval and the authority to do that tonight. Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, to comment a little bit more on Councilman Vixorik's idea, he suggested that staff meet and start to define. I would come back to what I suggested earlier. Maybe it may be more clear that if the staff and the 5 appointed members would meet in their initial meeting to actually define the role and what they expect, because we don't want them to overload the staff with requests of arbitrary information. So we do need to make sure that they're in sync on the kind of information, and we, Mr. Killebrew has nicely agreed that he'll give them whatever they need, but there could be a little bit of a better definition possible there, I guess, so we don't overload them. But so I think we could, if we want to move ahead and get some agreement, we could set the outcome of the first meeting to include at least a charter and a method to make them functional as a group, as opposed to. I'm assuming they would do that anyway, because they won't be very useful unless they get organized a bit. But asking them to come back and report on how they've organized and how they and what agreement they've reached with the city staff in terms of access to information might be helpful.
I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem's comments on that. I think maybe during that first meeting, they come back to us and say, here's what we've got, and then we as a council approve their plan. That would be fine with me.
Okay, well, currently the motion is to approve the resolution. So is there an amendment to approve the resolution with the inclusion that the first meeting being no later than 2/28/17 is a meeting of the 5 members and the acting city manager to come up with their mission and their procedures?
With the proviso that they come back and they report to us, and then we decide as a council, yes, that's what we as a council envision. I believe that would be appropriate. I mean, I have no problems with the members being appointed tonight and starting their work. I think that's fine, but I think we need to give them some direction to say, okay, here's what we as a council would like to see, and then once they report back, yes, that's what we envision as well, too, so. I would support an idea like that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is an amendment to the motion to say that the council will approve the resolution with the addition that there will be a first meeting of the Financial Review Committee no later than 2/28/17, and that at its first meeting, the Financial Review Committee, together with the acting city manager, will come up with its mission and its procedures, and that will be brought back to us for approval.
That's the way I envision the motion to be, yes.
So I have a second on that.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion as amended? Mr. Vazor?
Thank you, Madam. Just so I'm clear, I mean, I think we're really close in having the same idea. We might be talking around it from different perspectives, but again, I support that idea. I want them to come together and, as the Mayor Pro Tem said, to have all 5 members participate with staff and come up with the document that I've been talking about. I guess I still feel that it would be cleaner if we, simply directed that tonight, have them do it. We could set a date that they get together, get that document back to us, and bring it back at another, at the, February 28th.
Yes.
And I don't know what the date is of our next council meeting, but simply come back then, and we adopt the resolution, which would then include that founding document. And so I guess I'd like to make that a substitute motion and see if it gathers any
All right.
support.
I guess, Mr. Vixark, I'm having a hard time understanding it. You would like to see the members appointed this evening that we've suggested, and then they come back and they have a meeting, and then they come back with us? I was unclear. Maybe you could repeat that for me.
I think what I had in mind was the people that we've chosen would meet, and then they would come back. We would adopt the resolution, appoint them all at the same time. The reality is, I guess it doesn't really matter if we appoint them tonight, but if we don't have the resolution creating it, I don't know if we can do that. So I don't know if it would really make a difference. I think the intent was, I don't know if any of us are going to change our selections, but those are the people that are going to be on it. They would come in, they would figure out what they're going to do with the assistance of staff, bring that back so that we had that clarity. We would put it on the next agenda, and it would be cleaner that way, I think, and we adopt it all at once, rather than going ahead and authorizing it now and then hoping that they all come back with something later.
I guess my question with that would be, how do we get these people formally appointed and then have them start working? Is there any problem with Councilmember Vixorik's plan to do that, to not really officially appoint them?
I would submit that the resolution as amended does just what Mr. Vazorek is asking, that we authorize the 5 members that we have each chosen to constitute this committee, that they meet the qualifications, and that they meet with the city manager by 2/28/17 and bring back their procedures and their mission to us at the March 7th city council meeting for our approval. That is exactly what that motion says.
And I think, again, the point is simply that, what happens if they don't figure out the rules that they're going to go by the 28th? So it just would give them the incentive to figure that out. It just seems to be cleaner. It's the same, but it has a couple of benefits, I believe, my way. But as I said, I made the motion. I don't know if it garners any support or not.
Well, actually, the motion on the floor is to approve the resolution that is before us here at Action Document A, with the addition that the first meeting be held by the 5 members and the acting city manager by no later than February 28/17, and with the addition that the committee report back to us on March 7th with their mission, their procedures, and how the committee will be constituted and proceed from there for our approval. That's the motion that is before us and seconded.
I believe, Madam Mayor, that Mr. Vixorek made a substitute motion, and that will be the motion that we're going to have to act on initially, and I'm going to second his motion.
Okay, what is your motion, Mr. Vizorek?
What I said?
What is it you want to do?
I'd like for the 5 members that we have listed here that we've all chosen to meet with staff to come up with the founding document that directs the purpose of the committee, comes up with those details, comes up with the rules that the committee is going to operate by, says, those types of details. Once they figure that out, bring that back by the next council meeting, which I don't know the exact date of the next council meeting. If anyone knows it, that would be
March
great.
7th.
Okay. And at that point, we simply put it back on the agenda. We approve it all at one time.
Okay, so the motion, the substitute motion you are making, Mr. Vizorek, is that the 5 members that we have each appointed meet with staff, being the acting city manager, come up with their founding document and their rules, and bring that back to the council at the 3/7/17 meeting for our approval.
Yes.
And that is what you have seconded.
So,
Okay.
Madam Mayor, can I just make a couple of observations?
Yeah.
The committee is created. I mean, you created it at your last meeting, and,
Yeah.
Based on what you approved last time, we know who the individual appointees are. What I'm hearing is a little bit of a hang-up on whether or not the resolution should be adopted now, or, and I may be mistaken, but this is what I think I'm hearing, or whether a different resolution, or maybe this resolution, but, some resolution that governs the makeup of this committee would be adopted at a later date. I'm not hearing a lot of substantive difference between what everybody's saying, but I think what's important is that, in my mind, you don't need to adopt this resolution in order for the committee to be created. You kind of have already created it. This resolution we brought back simply as an effort to encapsulate what you did at the last meeting. And if it's not perfect yet, but, there's not a time deadline to adopt it now or not adopt it now. Another observation I think is important, just so you understand, in terms of scheduling a meeting, this is a meeting that is subject to the Brown Act. This is a committee that will be subject to the Brown Act, and so, it won't just be a meeting with the city manager. It'll be a posted meeting. Members of the public are welcome to show up, that sort of thing. Just make sure you understand that. We will have some challenges in the future in terms of providing documents 10 days in advance of meetings, potentially. I mean, that's just a practical consideration. Right now, it's a 72-hour in advance issue, so just something to think about. I mean, it doesn't mean that we can't do it 10 days in advance in the future. It's different than the norm, so bear that in mind. I think you could accomplish what you're doing. This feels very complicated to me, to do something that I'm not sure is that difficult based on what I'm hearing everybody saying, which is have the committee meet with staff and kind of come up with what they think their role is and present it. I think I'm hearing the only difference between the motions is whether we adopt this resolution tonight or not, which, I just don't think is legally necessary, at least for the committee to meet and to come back to you later. I don't know if that's helpful, but just some observations.
Thank you, that was helpful. If it's not required, then I guess the motion will be, my only point was, well, first of all, I thought we had to have a resolution. That was my understanding from the last meeting. So if we don't have to have a resolution, that's fine. My only point was that the motion that they meet by 2/28, because I just at least wanted to set some sort of time frame so that we're not sitting here saying, when are they supposed to meet?
So let me clarify what I meant. You ultimately have to have a resolution. It doesn't necessarily have to be this resolution. It doesn't have to be tonight. But in order to make a complete amendment to the prior resolutions of how the Financial Review Committee works, you will ultimately need a resolution. You've already acted to appoint, to agree on how you're going to appoint this, new committee. You've already, created your appointees. Dotting the Ts and crossing the Is, there's no legal penalty if you wait for another meeting or 2 meetings before you adopt a resolution that maybe will encapsulate, policies and procedures for how the organization is going to work based on the recommendations you get from your committee.
Okay,
if
but
that
the
makes sense to
committee
you.
has been formed, is that correct?
Yes.
And the 5 members that we've each chosen are on that committee?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess if we don't have agreement on when the committee will meet, I guess they will just have to come to that agreement amongst themselves with the acting city manager. Is that what I hear?
Well, that is an option. I mean, hopefully, there's some pretty clear direction from the council. You'd like them to meet soon, and you'd like them to come back with a recommendation for what they're going to be by the March 7th, I want to say it was, meeting.
Yes.
So, staff understands that we need to, start calling the people up, saying, when are you available to meet? We got to schedule a meeting, and it has to be, once we figure out when it's going to be, it has to be at least 72 hours from when we've just figured it's going to be, so we can get notices posted and all that sort of stuff. So, there's some legwork that has to occur, but if there's a generalized agreement that this committee should meet with staff and talk about what they envision their role to be, and then to present that to the council, I mean, frankly, I don't know, if that's really all you're trying to accomplish, I don't think you need anything more than just sort of a nodding of the heads if that's your direction to staff to make that happen, and we'll bring it back.
Okay, sounds good to me. So I will nod my head. Yes. Any more nods?
Yeah, I always thought the original resolution was a bit vague in its purpose, so I think I'm comfortable with the proceeding in the prescribed manner. So do we have to take a vote on this item, or do we just drop it at this point?
No, I think that,
And we give staff direction.
It's fairly clear to me from the conversation I've heard that we're going to bring something back to you on March 7th, and, it'll probably be largely based on recommendations from the committee, and there may be some tweaks in the resolution because of that, and then it'll be up to you to decide if you want to adopt that or not. What I'm hearing is that ultimately the council is going to decide what the committee is going to be, but it's going to be based on the recommendations from the committee itself.
That's correct. Okay, so we have now given staff direction. Can we move on? Yes. Excellent. Okay, yay. Another child is born. Does anybody need a break? 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 Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Okay, next item. Bet you thought we wouldn't get there. Next item is where am I? Where's my agenda? Okay, we are now at item 16, the 5th Marines Vietnam War Memorial. Could staff report, please?
We have a staff report, but I'm actually thinking I'm going to call up Pete Hammer here to give it. He's been sitting there long enough. You're more than welcome to come up here. You're going to follow me, so let me just chime in here really quick. Before you is a request that the City Council authorize a $10,000 donation to the Dana Point 5th Marines Regiment Support Group to contribute to the commission of the 5th Marines Vietnam War Memorial Monument honoring our fallen Marines and sailors. And just really quickly, Councilmember Vic Sorek brought this request to my attention several weeks back, that the Marine Corps League, which Pete Hammer heads up the South Coast Detachment, requested the city to contribute $10,000 in consort with 92 other private, corporate, and anonymous contributors. And some of those contributors that aren't anonymous include the Dana Point 5th Marine Support Group that the city has been a longtime supporter of, the Rothenbuehler Foundation, the Armed Forces Retiree Association, the Marine Corps League, South Coast Detachment, and the cities of Rancho Santa Margarita and San Clemente. Their lift here is to raise $400,000. And we did have Sergeant Major Hoopy was here earlier, and I know he had to leave. It was good to see his face. I'm sorry I didn't get to hear him, but please thank him for showing up tonight. And with that, We've got a quick video clip, and then I'm going to turn it over to Pete Hammer to give us a quick pitch.
Twice. First when he leaves his body, and second when his name is not spoken anymore.
The legacy of the Fighting Fifth Marines lives on today at the Memorial Gardens of Camp San Mateo at Camp Pendleton, California. The hallowed site that honors the names and units of the fallen warriors from Iraq and Afghanistan will now be joined by a new memorial honoring the 2,706 Marines and sailors who gave their lives for their nation during the Vietnam War. It is certainly time that the sacrifices of the 5th Marine Regiment in the Vietnam War are recognized with a special memorial monument to be created, transported, and erected in the Memorial Garden at their home in Camp Pendleton.
And with that, if I could invite Pete Hammer up to give his quick pitch.
Thank you for being here. Sorry it took you so long
Oh, that's quite all
to
right.
get up there.
Thank you very much for having us. To my right is Steve Caldwell. Steve is from Carlsbad. My name is Pete Hammer. I'm getting old. I'm a 25-year resident here in Dana Point and had the privilege of serving for you in the city of Dana Point with the Dana Point 5th Marine Regiment Support Group for almost 8 years, from 2007 to 2014, and then retired and moved on to become the commandant of our Marine Corps League South Coast Detachment. So it's really been a pleasure to be of service to the city, to the council on behalf of our 5th Marines. I might also add that Terry Rifkin is president and Mark Sutton as director and events chair have done an outstanding job. The 5th Marine Support Group, by the way, is the gold standard, I think, of support organizations, as exemplified by the award made by the residents in terms of selecting the 5th Marine Support Group to be the first military service nonprofit organization here in Dana Point. To my right is Steve Caldwell, a good friend, fellow Marine, captain. He was part of the 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, Delta Company and Country in 1967. Unfortunately, was severely wounded with a landmine explosion, hospitalized for several months, and is now finally healed. Steve is also the fundraising chair, as well as the point person for the monument with the 1-5 Vietnam Veterans Association. So with that, let me give you Steve Caldwell to comment a little bit about the monument, where we are, and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, thank you for this opportunity. As Pete indicated, 50 years ago, I was a young Marine Corps infantry officer with Delta Company, actually 2nd Platoon, Delta Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment. So my heart is with this project and with the 5th Marine Regiment. About 3 years ago, myself, Nick Ward, North Carolina, who's a Charlie 1-5 Marine, Pete Hammer, all Vietnam veterans, and the Dana Point 5th Marine Support Group started working on a Vietnam War Memorial at Camp San Mateo, Camp Pendleton, to honor our fallen Marines who died while serving with the 5th Marine Regiment in Vietnam. And our first challenge was to identify those Marines and sailors who died in Vietnam 50 years ago. That was our first challenge. And using the COFELT Vietnam Casualty Database, we were able to identify 2,706 Marines and sailors, corpsmen, who died while serving their country, while serving with the 5th Marine Regiment in Vietnam. Our second challenge was to develop a design. We were able to have all names and ranks of those who died on this memorial. which is the same as Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom. The Korean Memorial is being designed. So Rock of Ages in Vermont came up with the design you see here of panels that have the names and the rank of all those Marines and sailors who died, including an obelisk there in the center. We'll give some history of the Vietnam War and with the iconic rifle boots, helmet, and hand grenade of the Vietnam War. And this particular design fit in the footprint next to Operation Iraqi Freedom Memorial that the Marine Corps has given us. And then the next step was to begin our fundraising process. I was going to say that we had to get a cost contract from Rock of Ages, and the contract we have today is $357,000. By the way, did I mention Dana Point 5th Marine Support Group, which, as you know, is the best in the nation, are acting as fiduciary for our funds. We'll actually collect the funds, pay for the memorial, and then gift it to the Secretary of the Navy. And so we had to begin our next step, after getting his contract with Rock of Ages, we began a fundraising process. We started with $600 in March. Today we have $170,000, and we need another $130,000 to begin our manufacturing in August for installation in March 2018 for Dedication Day, Memorial Day 2018. We're on track to reach those goals. And with your support, it would help us reach those goals. Not only does this honor the 2,706 Marines and sailors who died, and I'll tell you, these are young men, because I went through all the research. These are 18, 19-year-old young men who never had a chance of a life. You not only honor these young men, but you honor their families. You honor the families that gave up their sons and their husbands and their brothers and whomever, their loved ones. You honor the families. And a nation, myself personally, a city and our nation needs to honor our fallen Marines and sailors, even though it was 50 years ago. These men stepped forward. They stepped forward when most stepped backwards. And they died for their country. And I appreciate your support. And Pete said I'm from Carlsbad, but I have to tell you, I spend most of my time at Dana Point watching my grandson's football and baseball games. So you got a great community here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, council members. And we just happen to have some beautiful challenge coins for you.
Great.
Yeah, these are Marine Corps coins that honor our fallen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What can we say? I mean, other than we appreciate your service, which is, it doesn't even begin to say how we feel about the sacrifices you and these men and women have made for us. So thank you. Okay, so we have a recommended action that the City Council authorize a donation to the Dana Point 5th Marine Regiment Support Group to contribute to the commission of a Vietnam War memorial monument honoring our fallen Marines and sailors. Do I have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make that motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you both. Any discussion? Mr.
I'd
Vazorek?
like to say a few words, if I could. Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I want to thank Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Hammer for your work on this. Really, I think we all understand how important this is and the effort that you're putting in. to make it happen. So I want to thank you, and I can say I'm honored that the city of Dana Point is able to assist you and play a role in this. So again, thank you for the work you're doing on this. I guess I want to say I'm sorry that it's taken so long in sort of two senses. I know you first made this request back in October, so I'm not really sure where the request got lost, but we have it now, and I appreciate you following up on that. But also, really more importantly, it's been 50 years. We see that there are monuments to OIF and OEF Marines, but not to the Marines from Vietnam. And that really, it's stunning to me that's the case. The video, I should say, for those of you who watched it, it was actually a shortened version of the video. I watched the whole video, and some of the things that they were talking about were how the Marines and all of our service members were treated when they came home from Vietnam. And another thing that stuns me, I mean, when I came back from Iraq, it was the middle of the night, and there were literally 35, 40 people waiting for us at the airport to say thank you with gift baskets. And I got to say, the vast majority of them were Vietnam veterans. I think they're members of the local VFW. It's something that our 5th Marine Support Group does. Members of the USO, I mean, these were the people who did not get this reception that were awake in the middle of the night to welcome us home. And I contrast that with the reception that I know the Vietnam veterans got, especially, I know a lot of them. I'm in the VFW. The VFW has a large percentage of Vietnam veterans in it. And they talk about how they were spit on, called names, couldn't wear their uniforms in the airport. And it's stunning is not the right word. I mean, it's awful. The way they were treated, it makes me sick to their stomachs. And sick to my stomach, I should say. And I think that, can we ever make up for that? No, we can't. I mean, but, at least this, I hope, is a step in the right direction of saying thank you. Because I got to say, one of the other things that I hear a lot that stuns me when I talk to some of the Vietnam veterans I know, and they'll tell me a story, hey, I was handing out Buddy Poppies at the grocery store, and somebody said, thank you for your service. And they say, that was the first time I've heard that. The first time I've heard that after 50 years. I can't believe that. So, let me be the one to say, perhaps on behalf of the entire city, thank you for your service, gentlemen. I hope you've heard it before, but believe me, thank you. And I know we'll never be able to make up for the treatment you've got, but it is important that this memorial be erected. And so I urge my colleagues to support the motion. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Tomlinson?
I'd like to echo Mr. Vicsorik's comments to you gentlemen as well. And if you get a chance to watch the full video that's out there, it's really quite moving and impressive. So thank you again.
Thank you. Any other comments? I just would like to say I was around when the veterans came back from Vietnam, and I too was appalled by the way those people were treated, many of whom were drafted. And, this was not their choice, but they went anyway, and they fought, and many of them didn't come back, and how we treated them was inexcusable. I've never understood it. I went to the Washington Vietnam Memorial, and it was the most moving memorial I've ever been to, and it was very controversial at the time that the woman who had designed it this memorial was picked, and I gotta say, everybody who can should see it because it is moving. And I'm happy to see this coming to our area and honoring our Vietnam veterans. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, with that, let's vote. Happily, the motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Yes, we'll be there.
Good job.
Well, thank you all for hanging in there with us. We're getting there. Okay, item 17, quarterly financial report, December 2016 staff report.
Yes, real briefly before you is the quarterly financial report for the 6 months actually ended December 31st, 2016. Is before you as a receiving file item. Kind of get to the point here. Our bottom line so far this year, revenues and expenditures are tracking in a manner that's not materially inconsistent with our budget. So it's a long-winded way of saying we're pretty much on budget. There are some variances in revenues and expenditures from both prior year and from budget, and they are detailed in the report. We'll be bringing forth a mid-year report in the next couple of meetings, if not the next meeting, the following one, that will propose a few budget adjustments, amendments. But at this point, I'm open to answer any questions regarding our year-to-date financials.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of staff? Any public comments? Public comment? Thank you. Mr. Wontrobski? Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Stephen Wontrobski, Mission Viejo. I want to reference page 6 of your support materials. The police services, 7.7% increase of $408,000 to $5.7 million. And I was introduced to the City Council last year when I came down to speak on the proposed police services contract last year, okay? And I recommended that the city manager do, it looks like 4 things, or 3 things here. 1, meet with other South Orange County city managers as a group and request ideas on how to lower sheriff department costs without impacting public safety. Next thing I recommended was gather police cost studies from other South Orange County cities and determine if any recommendations from those studies could be applicable to your operation here. Next item was that when I made those recommendations, the response was, or previous to that, was that I'd written a letter on this, and the response was that we had already done it down here. I was surprised to hear that. And so what I did was I issued a public records request just to let me review all of those items that staff said they had done, so that I could learn from those studies, which city managers were involved, and go back to Mission Viejo and use some of that information from here for their own police service contract negotiation. The response to my public records request was not one document existed. That was last year. Now, fast forward now to my attendance last week at the Aliso Viejo City Council meeting that discussed the police services contract that they're negotiating up there, all right? Various council members addressed their police chief and stated Aliso Viejo had a budget shortfall, all right? And the sheriff's department was requested to cut costs. Okay, now, based on that, I recommended to Aliso Viejo, and actually right now I recommend to your group too, that 1, hold a roundtable city manager discussion meeting, like last year I requested the League of Cities for free supply you with all information that they have for the 480 cities in California that have adopted reductions in police service costs, okay? and then negotiate the contract as a group. 6 cities, power in numbers, all right? Don't get fractured, individual, individual, individual. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments and your insight. And I am taking notes. Does anyone have any questions of staff? Are there any other public comments on that?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Is there a motion on the floor on this? Anybody wants to make a motion regarding city receive and file the city financial report and management discussion for 6 months ended December 31, 2016?
I'll make that motion, Madam Mayor.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Vote? The motion passes. The City Council will receive and file the city financial report and management discussion for 6 months ended December 31st, 2016, but I would like to assure Mr. Wontrobski that I have listened and written and taken comments to heart. Thank you.
Yes, and I would like to also extend that same thank you to him. Thank you.
Okay, item 18. City Council consideration to direct staff to hold a joint workshop with City Council and Planning Commission to discuss Town Center Lantern District parking policies. Is there a staff report?
Yes, I'm going to defer to Ursula to give a quick staff report.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. The staff report indicated that at the last council meeting, there were some members from the public that expressed some concerns about spillover commercial parking into the residential districts adjacent to Town Center Lantern District area. And staff is recommending a study session to be able to talk about different solutions and ideas for those concerns and concerns relative to parking in that area. I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Are there any public comments? Thank you. Miss Cindy Fleming? Hello.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor. and
Good evening.
Councilman. My name is Cindy Fleming, and I'm a 32-year, resident of Dana Point. I am very encouraged to see this item on the agenda tonight. As you know, I have spoken ad nauseum about the parking issues that already exist in certain areas of Dana Point and warned that the proposed parking plans of recent past would be disastrous. I encourage you to direct the staff to hold this workshop and as many others as are needed to put real plans in place and take actions to address this critical issue for both quality of life for Dana Point residents and the success of its businesses as well. Please require the staff to provide everyone in attendance on those workshops with real data forecasts from Caltrans, OCTA, and other transportation agencies. We cannot afford to continue to base our planning efforts on theories and the fact that solving a problem, the parking problem, is hard. It will never be easier than it is today, nor less costly. Parking may very well be the least sexy and single most element to Dana Point's future success. I thank you again for your consideration of this issue.
Thank you very much. As you know, I also am very excited to see a joint workshop. On the agenda, I have had discussions with several residents about a parking vision that I have for not only the town center, but the city, yourself being one of them, with your expertise in architects. So normally, if I were, in a corporation, I would sit down with the board of directors and say, hey, here's my idea, let's kick it around and see how we're doing. But because of the Brown Act, we can't all do that. So I am happy to see that we have this forum to start kicking around some ideas and letting the public hear them and have some input.
Madam Mayor, with
yes.
that in mind,
Mr.
I'll move the recommended action.
Excellent, thank you. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Very good. Any discussion or debate on the motion? Yes, Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was talking to the acting city manager about this and asked that it be put on after last month's, or the previous meeting. We had a resident, Ms. Kelly, come in and talk about a meeting she had with a real estate agent and a restaurant, and that they weren't going to actually be able to open because they couldn't park it. And it made me start to think about something, and I'm going to give Mr. Hill credit for this, because we talked about it probably a year ago. And it was, one of the problems I think we had with the parking plan we were trying to implement is we didn't take it far enough. And all we thought was parking, but we didn't consider what happens if we put 3 restaurants right next to each other. And our 2 per 1,000 probably doesn't work. So I think we need to take this even a little bit farther than just parking when we go to these joint sessions and we start talking about parking solutions, and we need to really start thinking about what is the mix in our zone about versus daytime usage, evening uses. How are we gonna distribute those across? So if it does come down to we find a different solution other than a parking structure, which, obviously most people know I'm not in favor of, but we need to plan accordingly to make sure that we don't create these hot spots that we have right now. And so I'm very excited about this, so we can all bring the community together and start having these conversations. I think it's incredibly important. And I want to take it even a step farther. We're talking about Lantern District and Town Center. We're going to have these same problems down in Doheny Village if we don't start addressing this right now. And I would take this a step farther and say we need to incorporate the Doheny Village plan in this as well. And that's just going to create more meetings, and maybe they will be handled separately, but we need to take a look at parking across our entire city. Ms. Fleming got it exactly right. This is the least sexy thing we do, and it's probably the hardest thing we have to do. So, we need to start having these meetings now and start coming up with ideas on how we're going to address this. And instead of having the arguments back and forth, well, this is what parking consultants are saying, this is what we think it's going to be, let's sit down and really talk about a more encompassing view, not just saying parking and not worry about the use that goes with it. We need to really pay attention to that. So I'm absolutely in support of these joint meetings, and it may be more than one with city council and planning, and we may have additional community meetings as well, and I think we need to do all that. So I am going to amend the motion to actually include the Doheny Village plan, or parking policies into this as well.
Okay, do I have a second on the amendment?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I think it's a good idea.
Shall we vote on the motion to direct staff to hold a joint workshop with the City Council and Planning Commission to discuss parking policies for the city of Dana Point, which is what this says, and specifically the town center / Lantern District, and added Doheny Village. Vote, please. Okay, the motion is carried, so the motion will direct city staff here to hold a joint workshop for the City Council and the Planning Commission to discuss appropriate parking policies for the entire city of Dana Point, and specifically and specially Town Center / Lantern District and Doheny Village. Last but not least, council discussion and adoption of a city purchasing policy as proposed by Mayor Lewis. Is there any staff report on this?
Just that we've put your proposal in the staff report.
Thank you. I can give a little report before a motion. I have studied some cities the federal acquisition regulations and the County of Orange, and I feel that it is fiscally prudent to have a policy that says after a certain amount of time, which seems to be the magic number is 5 years for all of the statutes I looked at, that we need to revisit our contracts and send them out to bid so that we aren't just kind of lulled into year after year using the same services, allowing the price to escalate without really looking at what we're getting, the value, what's out there. And that is not to say that we have to change providers. In fact, quite the opposite. The policy says this does not prohibit continuing with the same provider. But this way there is an automatic policy. It is the policy of the city. There is no stigma attached to any particular vendor when we start looking and seeing what's out there. And it also forces us to look at our contracts and determine, are we getting the best value for our money? Do we have goods or services that are in line with market price? And are there technology changes that we haven't even thought about because we simply just don't look, because we get in the habit of doing something over and over and over. So that was my thought of going into this. What this is not to, at this point, approve this policy. I have written a policy. I have given it to the city staff and to the other city council members for review, and it's available to the public. And I would just make a motion that the city council, staff, and public review this policy and comment on it by the next regularly scheduled meeting on March 7th so that we can decide if this should be a policy of the city. Do I have a second?
So that
Mayor Pro Tem?
the next regularly scheduled meeting's February 21st. So we could do it then. I'm just.
Thank you.
Sure.
I was still on March 7th. So we could set February 21st. So review, comment, and bring it back for review and comment at February 21st. And at that point, we could determine whether or not this is a policy that we want to adopt as a city. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Any debate? Hearing none?
So, well, I guess I have a question.
Okay.
So we're not adopting, the proposal tonight is not to adopt this action document A?
That's correct.
Correct. Okay.
It is merely to direct staff, council, and members of the public to review it and bring back comments at the next regularly scheduled council meeting so that we can debate the proposal, make any changes, or determine if it's a policy that the city wants to adopt. Any debate on that? Mr. Miller?
No debate. I just think it's a good idea to review it and get comments on it. I always think it's a good idea if we're going to start looking at how to improve cost reductions and be a little bit more fiscally responsible. So, yeah, I have no problem with the review of this and bringing it back.
Okay. Any other further questions, debate? Okay, shall we vote? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
If I could add, what I would suggest, when we come back on the 21st to talk about this, that in the interim, that we also encourage people, in addition to looking at what's proposed here, to look at the existing city municipal code, in particular sections 3.12 and 3.13, because that does lay out the rules in which the city does operate when it comes to purchasing, and they're kind of broken into a couple of different categories from what's defined as public projects under the California Government Code. And I've actually got a flow chart I'm going to make sure each of you get before you leave tonight that we use for training staff and we use religiously as issues come up, that walks people through what are you trying to do, and then what are the different thresholds and actions you have to take. So again, it's public projects under the government code, what we call supplies and equipment type of purchases, and then consulting services. So it's kind of broken into three categories, but I would strongly encourage that this overall discussion take place in the context of our current law, if you will.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so any further
Yeah,
questions?
I just have a quick question.
Mr.
Maybe
Tomlinson.
Maybe staff can answer this for me. Like the sheriff's department, how is that handled? There's not a real substitute for sheriff's department other than getting our own police force. What?
Under our current municipal code, contracts with the county aren't subject to a bidding process, if you will. So the sheriff's contract would fall into that, as does we've got agreements with the county to do some of our street maintenance work. And then I know Kathy's got some relationships with them for some of the some type of record keeping. I'm not exactly particular on what it is, but we have a couple contracts with government agencies that there is an exemption under one of either 312 or 313. I'm not sure which one. I think it's 313. But.
Okay, that satisfies my.
Okay, and as you will see in reviewing the policy, again, the intent is not to, the intent is simply to have a review mechanism that is automatic so that we don't have to do this on a contract-by-contract basis and think about this, and that it does not prohibit by its own policy determining that who we are using is still the best of what is out there. It's simply a mechanism as a policy to review. So I would just ask that people keep that in mind. So with that, is there any other debate on the motion? Shall we vote? Motion carries 5-0. So the motion is that the 5-year maximum purchasing policy for contracts be reviewed by staff, city council, and any members of the public so inclined, that comments are brought back at the next regularly scheduled council meeting, and that at that point we debate the policy and the specifics of the written policy. Okay, staff reports?
We had one item I'm going to actually ask Mark Denny to speak to, which was in regards to some concerns, comments we received regarding traffic flow on Santa Clara. So if you give us a quick update on where we're at in looking at that overall situation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Recall that at the last meeting, we heard some public comments concerning speed and traffic-related issues on Santa Clara Avenue, as well as a potential idea for some traffic calming improvements, bulb outs at the alleyway in between Santa Clara and Del Prado. Actually, in advance of that, because we got a heads up from Ms. Nelson about that, we did set devices out in the roadway to collect data on speed and volumes on Santa Clara and the adjacent cross streets. So we're currently analyzing that with our traffic engineering consultant. We're also analyzing the ideas for the bulb outs and developing rough order of magnitude costs, and we'll be putting together a memo in response to both of those issues to the city manager and to the city council, knock on wood, by the end of this week.
Great, and I do have a question. I know that stop signs were something that Santa Clara residents were interested in, but my understanding, and if you could just kind of expand on that, was that studies were needed and that specific requirements had to be met before stop signs could be put in. It isn't the city's discretion to do that?
That's correct, and that's the analysis that's being done now. We have to meet certain warrants that are mandated by the vehicle code and the I always mess up this acronym, CMUTCD,
number of
the California
letters.
regulations relative to traffic control devices in public roadways. And so that analysis is currently taking place with the data that we collected. So that will be provided to your council.
Okay, great. Any further staff reports?
I have nothing this evening.
Okay, so city attorney, no report. Okay, let's see. And I guess city council members, did you want to talk about any of your meetings that you attended or file your, just announce that you'd filed your report? I'll start with Mr. Miller.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I just want to talk about OCFA a little bit, and unfortunately, I left my report, but during this last rainstorms, our firefighters just, they were amazing what they went through. We had, at one point, 75 open calls. We have 72 fire departments in the entire system, and they met them off. And if you wanted if your drains were backed up in your yard, you could call and they would come and clear your drains for you. I mean, they did an amazing job. And I don't think people really realize what happens when there's storms like that and what these guys are really doing. They were doing rescues up in the mountains and the helicopters in the middle of these storms. I just want to, give a shout out to those guys. They're amazing. If you see them, tell them thank you. They do a fantastic job, and sometimes they just, don't get the real respect and people don't understand what they're really doing. So I wanted to do that, and I will turn in my list of reports to the clerk. List of meetings, sorry.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
I have turned in my list of meetings to the city clerk. I also would ask the city clerk to distribute a written report on the South Orange County Watershed Management Area Executive Committee meeting. Wow, that's a long meeting. To the other council members and to Mr. Rose, there are some technology requirements from the state on collecting and reporting data, and there's a budget being worked on, a proposal that's somewhat higher. It's actually significantly higher than it was last year. So we just want to be aware of what's in the proposal phase and what impact it may have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tomlinson?
I have no meetings to report at this time, but I will get a list to the city clerk as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vazorek?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have one thing. Since the last meeting, I attended my first meeting of the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District. There wasn't much to report, but based on some of the things that have been talked about tonight with the storm drains and the drought being over, there's one thing I did want to report because I actually found it interesting and sort of counterintuitive. We got a presentation on how the rains have affected possibility of West Nile virus, and the presentation actually told us that it's good, another good thing from the rains, because West Nile virus should go down in wet weather. Now, it was counterintuitive to me because I think we all know mosquito eggs are hatched in standing water, but so I thought more water would probably mean more mosquitoes, but as a matter of fact, because of the amount of water, and it is running water, and it cleans out the storm drains, and the standing water is not as much, that is a good thing. So as we've heard tonight, there are many good things that are coming out of the rain, including the end of the drought, what our firefighters are doing, but also there should be less West Nile virus this year. I will turn in the remainder of my meetings to the clerk. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vazorek. I would just like to say I have also turned in my meetings, but would like to report that I have been meeting several meetings and gotten to know the mayor of San Juan Capistrano, the mayor of San Clemente, and the mayor of Laguna Beach, and that we have been talking and discussing issues that are common to our cities and how we can all work together to resolve those problems. So we are making progress there. Thank you very much. Anything further? Okay, I would like to make a motion to adjourn in memory of Mr. Robert Moore, who served on the South Coast Water District for many years and who recently passed. And we send our condolences to his family. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.